Chapter 662. What do you mean? Qin Feiyang and Fatu were puzzled. The mansion master was the highest authority in the 9 states. It could be said that they contributed greatly to the prosperity of the 9 states. Logically speaking, after they succeeded and retired, they should enter the imperial capital to retire. But why did the old woman say that it was impossible to stay in the imperial capital for a long time? Let's talk as we walk. The ugly old woman pondered for a while, raised her head and said to the two, then turned around and walked slowly along the passage towards the exit. Qin Feiyang and Fatso looked at each other and followed silently. Wolf King and Black Dragon Snake were also unprecedentedly obedient, remaining silent along the way. After walking for a while, the ugly old woman finally spoke. Actually, there's another way to enter the imperial capital. What way? Qin Feiyang was surprised. To cultivate a group of talents. To put it simply, whether we, the old people guarding the altar, can enter the imperial capital has something to do with you young people. If you young people can win the 9 states war, then we can enter the imperial capital, or enjoy our old age in the imperial capital, or get an official position. But in the 100 years before you, almost no one successfully completed the 9 states war. There were even several times when the people of the spiritual state were completely annihilated in the 9 nether underworld. I really can't wait any longer. That's why this time I used the black poison to force you to win. The ugly old woman said. So that's how it is. Qin Feiyang muttered and asked, then, Senior, can you enter the imperial capital now? Yes. The ugly old woman nodded and said with a smile. So I have to thank you properly. Fatso's eyes lit up and he asked, How do you want to thank me? The ugly old woman pondered for a while and said, You can pick the herbs outside. This, Qin Feiyang and Fatu looked at each other. Then their eyes became hot. Wolf King, who was lying on Qin Feiyang's shoulder, was drooling. One had to know. There were countless medicinal herbs in the Butterfly Valley. Furthermore, they were all extremely rare medicinal herbs. It could be said that this was a huge treasure trove. On the other hand, the black dragon snake coiled around Fatso's wrist looked at them suspiciously. What kind of medicinal herb could make these 3 fellows so excited? Looking at Qin Feiyang's expression, the ugly old woman couldn't help but shake her head and laugh. Although you are allowed to pluck as much as you want, you should know when to stop and leave some for old man Rin. Qin Feiyang was stunned and asked in confusion, What does this have to do with the old master? Of course it's related. When I enter the imperial capital, the heavy responsibility of guarding the altar will fall on him. In other words, this will be his territory from now on. The ugly old woman laughed. Qin Feiyang frowned and said, Senior, do you mean that the old master also has to step down? That's right. The people who guard the altars must be extremely powerful. The prefecture lord is, without a doubt, the strongest existence in the 9 great provinces. You don't have to feel unjust for old man Rin, because this is the rule set by the emperor. Moreover, old man Ren has long wanted to step down. You may think that the prefecture lord has great power and is very dignified, but it's actually very tiring. In addition, old Manrin also wants to go to the imperial capital to enjoy his old age. If he doesn't step down and become the guardian of the altars, then his wish will never be fulfilled. This is the sorrow of being born in the 9 great provinces. The 9 great provinces originally belonged to the Great Qin Empire, and we are all citizens of the Great Qin Empire. However, it's as difficult as ascending to the heavens to enter the imperial capital. The ugly old woman sighed deeply, and there was a trace of injustice in her tone. Fatso said in his heart, Boss, Fat Lord thinks that the Great Qin Empire system really needs to be changed, because it's too unfair to the people of the 9 great provinces. Indeed, Wolf King nodded. Change? Qin Feiyang shook his head and said with a smile, It's not as easy as you make it out to be. These systems are set by the emperor of each generation. Other than the emperor, no one has the right to change them. Fatso chuckled and said, "Then we'll wait until you become the emperor to change them. Don't talk nonsense. This is a crime of treason. If it falls into the ears of someone with ulterior motives, it will lead to a fatal disaster." Qin Feiyang shouted in his heart. "What are you afraid of? It's only a matter of time anyway." Fatso curled his lips in disdain. Qin Feiyang helplessly glared at him, then looked at the ugly old woman and asked suspiciously, after the old mandarin steps down, "Who will take over the position of prefecture lord?" I guess that old mandarin already has a suitable candidate in mind. However, he can only recommend it to the emperor. In the end, it's up to the emperor to decide whether it will succeed or not. The ugly old woman said. Qin Feiyang nodded and lowered his head to ponder. Who would the old man Ren's candidate be? Wang Hong? If one were to judge based on strength and character, Wang Hong was the most likely candidate. Unknowingly, the 3 men and 2 beasts left the passage and arrived outside the small wooden building. At that moment, streams of aura entered Qin Feiyang's senses. He looked up and saw Lu Xingqian and the others standing in the air, whispering to each other. Wang Hong and Zhang Qianqing were also among them, their faces full of smiles. The ugly old woman said, "Wang Hong, Zhang Qianqing, you guys go first. I still have something to ask Qin Feiyang and Fatso to do." "Yes." Wang Hong and Zhang Qianqing replied respectfully. Then, Wang Hong looked at Qin Feiyang and transmitted his voice. "Kid, after you're done with your business, go and see the prefecture lord immediately." "Okay," Qin Feiyang replied in his heart. Then Wang Hong opened a portal and quickly left with Lu Xingqian and the others. Strange. Fatso looked at the portal and frowned. What's strange? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Fatso said, "Aren't Wang Hong and Zhang Qianqing also in the 9 nether yellow springs? Where did they come from?" The ugly old woman said, "They are only escorting you in. After you leave, the power of the rules of the 9 nether yellow springs will take the initiative to send them out." Qin Feiyang asked, "Senior, did you also participate in the 9 regions' Great War?" "Of course. Every prefecture lord is chosen from those who participated in the 9 regions' Great War. But they are all failures, because those who succeeded all went to the imperial capital." The ugly old woman said somewhat awkwardly, "In other words, you were also a failure back then? Haha, so you're so bad." Fatso suddenly laughed out loud. The ugly old woman's face darkened and said coldly, "Do you believe that I won't cripple you?" Fatso shrunk his neck in fright and immediately shut his mouth, but his face was red. "Don't shoot your mouth off." Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at Fatso and sighed. "Those who succeed enter the imperial capital. Those who fail become prefecture lords or commanders. In fact, as long as they can come out alive, their achievements in the future will not be too low. It's just that the price is too high. Yes, countless people enter the 9 nether yellow springs one after another. But how many survive in the end? But what can be done? It's just that this world is too cruel." The ugly old woman sighed deeply, then shook her head and said with a smile, "Let's not talk about it. Go and pick the herbs." Okay. At the mention of herbs, Qin Feiyang, Zhang Qianqing, and Wolf King were extremely excited as if they had been injected with chicken blood. But just as they flew into the sky, Qin Feiyang suddenly thought of something. He looked down at the old woman and asked in confusion, "Senior, you just told Wang Hong and Zhang Qianqing that you have something for Fatso and me to do. What is it?" "Idiot." The ugly old woman rolled her eyes at Qin Feiyang, then turned and entered the small wooden house without looking back. "What do you mean?" Fatso scratched his head, his face full of suspicion. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment, then said in realization, "I understand." She said that to send Lu Xingqian and the others away. "Send them away?" Fatso was stunned. "Think about it. Lu Xingqian and the others are the same as us. They have also won the 9 states battle. If she only lets us pick the herbs and doesn't let them do it, won't they say that she is biased behind her back? Qin Feiyong said with a smile. Ha ha! Fatso was stunned, then he laughed and said, I didn't expect this old witch to be so scheming. A row of black lines immediately appeared on Qin Feiyong's forehead. He angrily said, That's enough! If your disrespect angers her and she doesn't let us pick the medicinal herbs, I won't forgive you. Don't worry, she can't hear you. Fatso laughed mischievously, but before he finished, the ugly old woman's cold voice came from the small wooden house. Although this old woman is old, my ears are still very good. Damn, Fatso, you better be careful. Hearing this, Fatso's face changed, and he smiled apologetically. Did you hear that? Be careful. Qin Feiyong glanced at Fatso with schadenfreude and flew towards the sea of flowers. TSK. Fatso raised his middle finger in disdain and quickly followed. In the sea of flowers, hundreds of flowers bloomed, and the fragrance of flowers assailed the nose. The herbs were like slender and elegant young girls, swaying in the wind and gushing out rays of light. As soon as Qin Feiyong entered the sea of flowers, he called out Lu Hong and the pangolin. When the black dragon snake saw the herbs, it was dumbfounded on the spot. There were so many herbs. No wonder Qin Feiyong and the others were so excited. For a moment, Qin Feiyong and the other 2, Wolf King and the other 2 beasts, began to frantically sweep through the sea of flowers. Boss, come over and take a look. What kind of herb is this? Suddenly, Fatso's surprised voice sounded. Qin Feiyong walked over and looked down at the herb in Fatso's hand. His eyes immediately lit up. This medicinal herb was a finger tall. Its entire body was green and crystal clear. There were 3 cloud-shaped leaves on it, emitting a hazy radiance. Fatso urged, What exactly is it, tell me? Qin Feiyong swallowed his saliva and said, This is the spirit cloud grass, one of the main ingredients for refining the spirit sea pill. I'll go. Fatso looked at the spirit cloud grass with shining eyes. The spirit sea pill could be used to cultivate a shattered qi si. As one of the main medicinal herbs, the spirit cloud grass was definitely priceless. Qin Feiyong, I also found a fruit that I have never seen before. On the other side, Lu Hong also said at this time. Qin Feiyong hurriedly ran over and looked down. The excitement on his face could not be concealed. Chapter 663. Lu Hong looked at Qin Feiyong's expression and said with a smile, It seems that this is another precious medicinal herb. It's not just a little precious, it's very precious. This fruit is called the dragon saliva fruit. It's a medicinal herb used to refine the 9-turn dragon blood pill, and it's second only to the first-ranked dragon blood. Qin Feiyong was extremely excited. He originally thought that the 9-turn dragon blood pill's medicinal herbs could only be found in the imperial capital, but he didn't expect to find one here. He scanned the sea of flowers. It was hard to imagine how many more of these medicinal herbs there were. He came back to his senses and shouted, Quick, quick! All the medicinal herbs you haven't seen before. Don't leave a single one behind. After an entire hour, the few of them finally stopped sweeping and gathered together. Qin Feiyong asked, How's the harvest? Fatso held a qiankuan bag and waved it in front of Qin Feiyong. He said with a sneaky smile, Together, it's almost half a qiankuan bag. Qin Feiyong was overjoyed when he heard this. Then he waved his hand and led everyone into the castle. He walked to the altar, opened the iron box, and took out the pill scripture. He said to Fatso and Lu Hong, Categorize the medicinal herbs. If you encounter any medicinal herbs you don't know, read the pill scripture. Pangolin, black dragon snake, stay here and help. After that, he added another sentence. Understood. The 2 nodded and immediately squatted on the ground, getting busy. Qin Feiyang also left the castle with Wolf King and went to the small wooden house. In front of the courtyard gate, Qin Feiyang stood respectfully and cupped his hands. "Senior, I'll take my leave first." "Go. When we enter the imperial capital, I'll let Old Man Rin inform you." The ugly old woman's voice came from the wooden house. "Thank you, Senior." Qin Feiyang bowed and expressed his thanks. Then he walked into a teleportation gate. Mansion Master's mansion. In the conference hall, the old man sat on the top. Wang Hong and Zhang Qianqing sat on the 2 seats below. Ran Wushuang, Lu Xingqian, Dong Zhenyang, and Shen Mei stood in the center of the hall, recounting what had happened in the Yellow Springs. Although the old master and Wang Hong had experienced the Great War of the 9 prefectures, they still couldn't help but shudder when they heard the narration of the 4 people. Whoosh! Outside the palace, a ripple suddenly appeared in the void, and Qin Feiyang and Wolf King appeared out of thin air. "Brother Qin, Brother Wolf King, congratulations!" "That's right. Now, not only will you be able to enter the imperial capital, but you will also be famous throughout the 9 great provinces." As soon as the guards outside the hall saw the man and the wolf appear, they immediately surrounded them. Wolf King smiled proudly and said, "Are you envious?" "I'm not envious. I'm very envious. We dream of going to the imperial capital, but unfortunately we won't have the chance in our entire lives. Brother Qin, Brother Wolf King, when you go to the imperial capital, you must work hard. Don't embarrass our spiritual state." The group of people smiled and complimented. Wolf King patted his chest and said in high spirits, "Don't worry, when we reach the imperial capital, we will still be the ones bullying them." The group of people couldn't help but laugh. However, with this man and Wolf's lawless personality, they might really turn the imperial capital upside down. "Brat, what are you doing outside? Come in quickly." At this moment, the old master's dissatisfied voice sounded in the hall. The guards surrounding Qin Feiyang and Wolf King hurriedly retreated to the side. Qin Feiyang smiled at the group of people, walked to the door, and gently pushed it open. Then he walked in and bowed. "Greetings, Mansion Master." The old master glanced at him and said, "Close the door." Qin Feiyang turned around and closed the palace door. He walked to the side of Ren Wushuang and the others and looked at Wang Hong and Zhang Qianqing. He cupped his hands and said with a smile, "Seniors, how have you been?" "We're still the same. As for you, I heard from Wushuang and the others that you showed off your might in the 9 nether underworld." Wang Hong teased. "I was lucky." Qin Feiyang laughed dryly. Wang Hong's face twitched, and he said, "Mansion Master and I were also very lucky back then. Why didn't we win?" "This." Qin Feiyang thought for a moment and smiled awkwardly. "Maybe it's because we were a little luckier than you." Hearing this, the old master, Wang Hong, and Zhang Qianqing couldn't help but shake their heads and laugh. The old master said with a pleasant expression, "You contributed greatly to our spiritual state's great victory this time. Tell me, what reward do you want? This old man will give it to you." "Really?" Qin Feiyang said. "Nonsense. This old man always means what he says." The old master glared at him in annoyance. Wang Hong chuckled. "Qin Feiyang, you're the first person who dares to question the Mansion Master. You've got guts." Qin Feiyang laughed dryly and looked at the old master. "I want a 5th grade alchemy fire." The old master's face darkened. What kind of joke was this? The highest level of alchemy fire in the spiritual state was a 4th grade alchemy fire. How dare he ask for a 5th grade alchemy fire? Wasn't this clearly making things difficult for him? "You don't have it?" Qin Feiyang couldn't help but feel disappointed. He thought for a moment and said, "Then give me 5 or 6 perfect battle arts." As soon as he said that, everyone looked at him in shock. Was this guy purposely picking a fight? The old master was so angry that his beard blew and his eyes widened. He said angrily, "Just pretend that this old man didn't say anything." The mansion master is acting shamelessly. How shameless? Wolf King mumbled. What did you say? The old master's eyelids twitched, and he glared at Wolf King. Wolf King picked his nose and said lazily, Brothers said that you're old but strong, unparalleled, unrivaled, and unparalleled. The old master clenched his fists and was about to go crazy. In the end, he held it in and waved his hand impatiently. All right, all right. This old man will let you go to the treasury and choose something. Treasury? Qin Feiyang and Wolf King were stunned. The old master didn't explain and looked at Wang Hong. Take them there. Ren Wuxuang glanced at Qin Feiyang and Wang Hong and said unhappily, Grandpa, you can't favor one and discriminate against the other. The old master looked at her, then at Lu Xingqian and the other two. If it weren't for Qin Feiyang, would you be able to come back alive? This old man has always been fair and impartial. I will never bend the law for personal gain. Ren Wuxuang immediately lowered her head. Lu Xingqian and the other two looked at each other and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. The old master looked at Wang Hong again and said, Keep an eye on them. Don't let them take anything else. Yes. Wang Hong nodded and got up to open a portal. He looked at Qin Feiyang and Wolf King and said, Let's go. There must be a lot of treasures in the treasury. The Wolf King chuckled and rushed into the teleportation gate first. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. He followed behind Wang Hong and entered the portal under the envious gazes of Dong Jingyang and the others. The next moment, 2 people and 1 beast landed in the sky above a mountain range. Qin Feiyang scanned the area below with a surprised expression. Below, the mountains were undulating, the vegetation was lush, and a rapid river ran through the east, west, north, and south like a giant python. And right below, on the top of a mountain, sat a huge ancient castle. The ancient castle was completely black, as if a peerless beast was lying there, emitting a cold aura. Wolf King looked at the ancient castle and said in surprise, That's the treasury. That's right. This is the back mountain of the mansion master's mansion. The 10 commanders usually cultivate here in order to protect the treasury. Wang Hong said. Qin Feiyang took a closer look. Sure enough, there were many small and exquisite wooden buildings in the mountain streams around the ancient castle, and in the small wooden buildings, he could faintly sense a powerful aura. Let's go down. Wang Hong waved his hand and landed in front of the gate of the ancient castle with a man and a wolf. Then, Wang Hong took out a pentagonal badge and pointed it at the gate of the ancient castle. Immediately, a beam of light rushed out from the badge and entered the gate. Boom! A gap suddenly appeared on the gate, and then it slowly opened. Wolf King looked at the gate, then looked at the badge in Wang Hong's hand with shifty eyes. Wang Hong sneered. Don't look, there are only 2 badges in total. One is on Lord Mansion Master, and the other is on me. If you have the confidence to defeat me, stop talking. Wolf King waved his claws, turned around and rushed into the castle. Even though it had already broken through to the 2-star War Master, it was still unable to see through Wang Hong's cultivation. And Wang Hong said it with such confidence, it was obvious that he did not put it in his eyes at all. Therefore, it decisively gave up on the little scheme in its heart. Little brat. Looking at Wolf King's small back, Wang Hong could not help but shake his head and laugh. As for Wolf King, he was dumbfounded the moment he entered the castle. When Qin Feiyang entered, it was the same, his eyes filled with disbelief. Inside the huge castle, there were many tall iron shelves neatly arranged, and every iron shelf was filled with things. There were all kinds of divine weapons, iron and jade boxes of all sizes, and a large number of universe bags. These weapons were collected by the previous mansion masters. Each of them can cut through iron like mud. And these iron and jade boxes, some of them contain martial skills, some of them contain battle arts, and some of them contain pills, pill formulas, pilfires, and precious medicinal ingredients. As for those universe bag, they are all gold coins. After Wang Hong closed the door, he brought Qin Feiyang and Wolf King around the treasure trove and introduced them. Qin Feiyang stopped beside a battle sword, grabbed the hilt, and flicked the blade. Clang! Immediately, an ear-piercing sound echoed in the treasure trove. There was no noise at all. It was obviously a top-grade battle sword. Wang Hong turned to look at Qin Feiyang and laughed. "Have you taken a fancy to it?" Qin Feiyang laughed and placed the battle sword back in its original position. No matter how powerful the weapon was, how could it compare to Chang Shui? He looked at the other weapons. Although they were all good, none of them caught his eye. Next, he opened the jade and iron boxes again, but he did not choose anything, because he could no longer use the martial skills. As for the battle arts, the highest grade was only high grade, which was meaningless. As for the pill formulas, they were even more unable to attract his attention, because all the pill formulas in the Dan scripture were there. The only thing that moved him was the medicinal ingredients and the pill fire. But in the end, the pill fire was only first grade, second grade, and third grade. There wasn't even a fourth grade pill fire, let alone the fifth grade pill fire that he desired. In the end, he gave up on the pill fire and only focused on the medicinal ingredients. "What exactly do you want?" Seeing that Qin Feiyang did not make a decision, Wang Hong gradually lost his patience. One had to know. Ordinary things couldn't enter this treasure trove at all. In other words, the things that could enter this treasure trove, other than gold coins, were all valuable treasures. But looking at Qin Feiyang's current appearance, it seemed that nothing could catch his eye. "Don't worry." Qin Feiyang smiled and walked towards the deepest part of the treasure trove. After a series of observations, he discovered that the deeper he went, the more precious the items were. A moment later, he stopped in front of the innermost row of iron shelves and raised his head to scan the jade boxes on them. Very quickly, Qin Feiyang discovered something unusual. On the other iron shelves, there were dozens of jade boxes piled up on each floor. Chapter 664. There must be something fishy going on. Qin Feiyang decisively grabbed a jade box and opened it. Just as the box was opened, a cold aura surged out. Qin Feiyang's eyes immediately lit up with joy. Inside the jade box lay a strange flower the size of a baby's fist. It was completely white, as if it was carved out of white bones. Wasn't this the flower of death? At the same time, the Wolf King's eyes also shone brightly as he drooled. He didn't expect that there would be such a treasure hidden in this treasure vault. Looking at Qin Feiyang and Wolf King's eyes, Wang Hong frowned slightly and asked, "Do you know what this is?" "What do you mean?" "As one of the guardians of the treasure vault, you don't know about the flower of death." Qin Feiyang was stunned and shook his head. "I don't know. Senior, can you explain it? You really don't know." Wang Hong looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Qin Feiyang nodded. Wang Hong secretly heaved a sigh of relief and smiled. "This is just a very ordinary medicinal herb. It's not very useful." A man and a wolf looked at each other. "Flower of death is ordinary? Who are you trying to fool?" Qin Feiyang chuckled. "Senior, if you don't want me to take this flower of death away, you can just say so. Why lie to me? You know." Wang Hong was surprised. Wolf King pursed his lips. "Of course I know. We got one in the netherworld." Wang Hong suddenly felt awkward. He really didn't want Qin Feiyang to take away the flower of death. Because the flower of death was too precious, he lied to Qin Feiyang and said that it was just an ordinary medicinal herb. But he never expected that he would end up losing the rice used to lure it. Instead, he made himself so embarrassed. Qin Feiyang glanced at Wang Hong in amusement. Then he casually grabbed another jade box. When he opened it, strands of multicolored light shot out. "Damn, this is the jade crystal flower," Wolf King exclaimed. "What? You even know about the jade crystal flower? Wang Hong stared blankly at the man and the wolf. Is it strange that we know? Wolf King glanced at him indifferently and also grabbed a jade box. He opened it and immediately curled his lips in disdain. Inside the jade box was a blood ginseng. To others, the blood ginseng was a rare treasure that could only be encountered by chance. But to Wolf King it was nothing at all. He immediately closed the lid of the box and put it back to its original position. But at this moment, Qin Feiyang suddenly frowned, stretched out his hand, and said, "Let me see." Previously, when Wolf King opened the jade box, he also glanced at the blood ginseng, but didn't pay it much attention. However, just as Wolf King closed the box, he suddenly had a strange feeling. This blood ginseng seemed to be somewhat different from ordinary blood ginseng. Wolf King said disdainfully, "It's just a blood ginseng. What's there to see?" At the same time, at the side, Wang Hong stared at Qin Feiyang with a trace of nervousness in his eyes. "Cut the crap." Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at Wolf King and took the initiative to grab the jade box. Then he opened the lid and carefully looked at the blood ginseng. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang's eyes narrowed. Immediately after, his face was filled with ecstasy. The blood ginseng lay quietly in the jade box, emitting a hazy blood light. At first glance, it was no different from ordinary blood ginseng. But if one looked carefully, there was a shocking discovery. On the surface of the blood ginseng, there was a blood-colored pattern. The shape of this pattern was like a tiger. Moreover, according to Qin Feiyang's observation, there was no trace of engraving on the blood ginseng. This was enough to show that this tiger-shaped pattern was not man-made. It grew on its own. He was no stranger to this pattern. It was called the tiger-shaped spirit pattern. Only medicinal herbs that had reached 10,000 years old would give birth to this tiger-shaped spirit pattern. In other words, the blood ginseng in front of him was 10,000 years old. 10,000-year-old blood ginseng. How could this not make him excited? That was because refining the small creation pill required these 10,000 years old medicinal herbs. He originally thought that these medicinal herbs were basically impossible to find, but he did not expect to find one here. At the same time, Wang Hong, who was at the side, looked at Qin Feiyang's expression and could not help but feel weak. It was over. He must have been discovered by this brat. He really could not understand how this Qin Feiyang knew everything. One had to know. Medicinal herbs that were 10,000 years old were already peerless. Therefore, very few people in the world knew the characteristics of 10,000 years old medicinal herbs. Even when he saw this blood ginseng back then, he only knew that this was a 10,000 years old blood ginseng after hearing the old man's explanation. But Qin Feiyang could tell at a glance. Wasn't this too unbelievable? Could it be that this brat had seen it before? But that was impossible. Qin Feiyang was just a country boy. How could he have the chance to see this 10,000 years old medicinal herb? Just as Wang Hong was puzzled, Qin Feiyang closed the jade box, turned to look at Wang Hong, and said with a smile, "Senior, I want this blood ginseng." Wang Hong's face suddenly twitched. Wolf King was a little anxious and said with a voice transmission, "Little Qin Zi, you don't want the death flower and the jade crystal flower, but you want this blood ginseng. Is there something wrong with your head?" "You don't understand," Qin Feiyang said secretly. "What do you mean?" Wolf King frowned. Qin Feiyang said with a smile, "This is a 10,000 years old blood ginseng. It's many times more precious than the death flower and the jade crystal flower." "What? A 10,000 years old blood ginseng?" Wolf King was dumbfounded on the spot and looked at the jade box with a dumbfounded expression. Seeing Qin Feiyang and Wolf King flirting with each other, Wang Hong could not help but frown and said, "Kid, do you want to think about it again?" Qin Feiyang said with a smile, "Senior, are you trying to trick me again? Don't waste your time, I want it." Bastard. Wang Hong cursed under his breath and nodded helplessly. Okay, it's the mansion master who said so. Take it. Qin Feiyang smiled and put away the iron box without hesitation. He glanced at the other jade boxes and asked suspiciously, Senior, why are there 10,000 years old medicinal herbs here? Wang Hong said, It said that the first mansion master left them behind. I see. Qin Feiyang suddenly understood. If it was the first mansion master who collected it, then it wouldn't be anything strange. After all, the first mansion master and the first emperor existed at the same time. Then, are there any other 10,000 years old medicinal herbs here? Wolf King asked, looking at the jade boxes on the iron shelf with a green light in his eyes. Wang Hong's face darkened, and he said angrily, You've already taken the 10,000 years old blood ginseng. Why are you still asking so much? I'm just asking. I didn't say I wanted it. Why are you so stingy? Wolf King pouted. I'm stingy? Wang Hong pointed at his nose and glared at Wolf King. However, he suddenly frowned and lowered his head in silence. Qin Feiyang and Wolf King looked at him curiously. A moment later, Wang Hong looked up at Wolf King and Qin Feiyang and said telepathically, If you guys can agree to a request of mine, I'll make the decision in private and let you guys choose another one. The man and Wolf looked at each other with joy in their eyes. Wolf King said hurriedly, What request? Tell us. Wang Hong said, Give me the recipes for the potential pill and 9-melody yellow dragon pill. What? Aren't you being too greedy? Wolf King said angrily. Qin Feiyang's face was also filled with anger. The pill formulas of the potential pill and the 9-chew yellow dragon pill. Any one of them could bring endless wealth. Wasn't he afraid of dying from overeating by asking for 2 recipes? Most importantly, this was the state capital's treasure vault. Everything here didn't belong to anyone. Even the old master, who was the mansion master, could not take it for himself. That was because this was a public asset of the entire spiritual state. But now, Wang Hong was using the things here to make a deal with him? Qin Feiyang really did not expect that Wang Hong, who had always been open and above board, would be so scheming. Looking at Qin Feiyang and Wolf King's expressions, Wang Hong sighed deeply and said, I know that you guys must be thinking that I'm a greedy villain. Aren't you? Wolf King sneered. No. Wang Hong shook his head and said, I'm doing this for the mansion master. Qin Feiyang frowned. What did this have to do with the old master? Wang Hong's face showed a trace of worry and said, There are many things that you don't know. One of them is that the old master is about to step down. Qin Feiyang said, We know about this. Wang Hong was slightly stunned and asked suspiciously, How did you know? Qin Feiyang said, The previous mansion master told us. I see, Wang Hong mumbled and asked telepathically, Then did she tell you that the old master will be guarding the altar after stepping down? Qin Feiyang nodded. Wolf King said impatiently, We know all this. Just tell us. Why do you want these 2 recipes? To help the old master enter the imperial capital. The old master has always had a wish to stay in the imperial capital and enjoy the rest of his life. But do you know? He has to wait until the next participant of the 9 states tournament wins before he can enter the imperial capital. But I don't have much confidence in the next 9 states tournament. Wang Hong said worriedly, It can't be. Aren't there many talented people in the inner palace? For example, Murong Jing. 10 years later, her achievements won't be any worse than Dongfang Wuhin and the others. Qin Feiyang said, I've also heard of Murong Jing. She's very talented in alchemy and cultivation. She's also very low-key. She's a good seedling. But as far as I know, she just broke through to the 2-star combat emperor not long ago. At this speed, can she break through to the War Master realm in 10 years? Wang Hong said. What? Qin Feiyang was stunned. He remembered that he and Murongjing entered the inner palace together. Now he was already a 1-star combat emperor, but Murongjing had just broken through to the 2-star combat emperor. Wasn't this too slow? Can she be compared to you monsters? All of you have opened the door of potential. Wang Hong rolled his eyes. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but laugh. Indeed, according to the cultivation speed of ordinary people, Murongjing was already very outstanding, but compared to them, her talent was mediocre. So, my plan is to use the potential elixir and the Juka Yellow Dragon elixir to cultivate them. As long as we have the potential elixir and the Juka Yellow Dragon elixir, the spiritual state will definitely win the 9 states tournament in 10 years. By then, the old master will be able to fulfill his wish and enter the imperial capital to enjoy his old age. Chapter 665. So that's how it is. Qin Feiyang finally understood. He cupped his hands and said, "Senior, you really put in a lot of effort. I misunderstood you just now. Please forgive me." "It's okay." Wang Hong waved his hand and sighed. "All these years, the old man has treated me like family. Naturally, I have to do something for him. So please help me. Senior, you know how to repay kindness. The old man has been good to me. Logically, I should help you, but..." At this point, Qin Feiyang frowned. Wang Hong immediately promised, "Don't worry. I won't tell anyone about the recipe." Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment and looked at Wang Hong. "This is too important. Please give me a few days to think about it." "Okay." Wang Hong nodded and smiled. He also knew that this request was a bit difficult, so he didn't urge him. Qin Feiyang didn't mention the treasure selection again. After all, he didn't promise anyone. How could he bring it up? 2 people and 1 wolf walked out of the treasury, one after another. Immediately, a beautiful figure entered their sight. It was Ren Wushuang. After Wang Hong closed the stone door, he asked in confusion, "Wushuang, why are you here?" Ren Wushuang bowed to Wang Hong and said, "I have something to talk to Qin Feiyang about." "Me?" Qin Feiyang frowned slightly. He couldn't help but have an uneasy premonition. Wang Hong looked at the 2 meaningfully and smiled. "Okay, you guys talk." With that, he opened a teleportation door and went to report to the old man. After the portal disappeared, Ren Wushuang immediately ran to Qin Feiyang and said, "Feiyang, can you tell me where my father is now?" As expected, Qin Feiyang guessed that Ren Wushuang came to him because of Ren Duxing. After a moment of silence, Qin Feiyang said, "Sis, it's not that I don't want to tell you about Uncle Ren's whereabouts. It's Grandpa who doesn't want me to tell you. He doesn't want you to worry." "Grandpa knows too?" Ren Wushuang's face froze. Qin Feiyang nodded and added, "But the old man only knows that Uncle Ren is still alive. He doesn't know where Uncle Ren is now." "Why?" Ren Wushuang looked at him in confusion. Qin Feiyang said, "Because Uncle Ren doesn't want you to know where he is." "Even so, you can't hide it from me. This is too much." After saying that, she squatted on the ground, hugged her shoulders, and cried. "Sis, don't be like this, okay? If others see this, they will think that I am bullying you." Qin Feiyang said helplessly, "You guys are bullying me. I am not a child." "Why don't you tell me?" Ren Wushuang whispered, tears falling like rain. Qin Feiyang said helplessly, "Can you stop crying?" Ren Wushuang turned a deaf ear to it and silently shed tears. Her thin body was curled up there while shivering, and she seemed to be extremely helpless. "Aya!" "Qin Feiyang, Wushuang, what are you 2 doing here?" At this moment, one figure after another streaked across the sky. It was 3rd young Master Chao and the other commanders. Fan Jian was also among them. The 9 people landed on the square outside the castle and looked at the 2 of them curiously. Qin Feiyang smiled and said nothing. "Is that so? Then why is Miss Wushuang crying?" Fan Jian looked at Qin Feiyang strangely. Xue Huiyan frowned and said, Qin Feiyang, did you bully Wu Shuang? Third young master Chao said with a cold face, Let me tell you, Wu Shuang is the apple of our eye. If you dare to bully her, we will not forgive you. I didn't. Qin Feiyang quickly waved his hand. Wolf King stood at the side. Not only did he not help to explain, he even looked at Qin Feiyang with schadenfreude. Really? Third young master Chao looked at him unkindly. Qin Feiyang was about to break down and said, Sis, don't cry. If you keep crying, I won't be able to clear my name even if I jump into the Yellow River. Then do you want to tell me? Ren Wushuang sent a sound transmission, her tone carrying a hint of threat. Qin Feiyang rubbed his aching forehead, looked at Wolf King beside him, and said angrily, Can you help me out? This is between you two. What can I say? The Wolf King said indifferently, acting as if this matter had nothing to do with him. You win. Qin Feiyang glared at it fiercely, gritted his teeth, and sent a sound transmission to Ren Wushuang. Okay, I'll take you to see him. Really? Ren Wushuang's delicate body trembled. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. If he did not agree, he might really be beaten up by third young master Chao and the others. Ren Wushuang suddenly laughed through her tears, got up, wiped her tears, and looked at Xue Huiyun and the others. He didn't bully me. Just sand got into my eyes. Sand got into your eyes? The 9 people looked at each other, obviously not believing. That? Cough, cough, Qin Feiyang coughed and said with a smile. Everyone, I have something to do, so I'll leave first. Then he opened a portal and left quickly with Ren Wushuang and Wolf King. What's going on? Third young Master Chao and the others looked at each other. Iron Chain Bridge in the Land of Ruins. Whoosh! 2 people and a wolf suddenly appeared out of thin air. Ren Wushuang looked in front of her and said in surprise, Isn't this the entrance to the Land of Ruins? That's right. Uncle Rin is down here. Qin Feiyang pointed at the canyon. Ren Wushuang's eyes trembled, and she immediately landed on the bridge, looked down at the canyon and shouted, Father! I'm here to find you. Can you come out and see your daughter? Her voice echoed in the canyon, carrying a deep longing and desire, and did not disappear for a long time. But in the canyon, other than the whistling of the storm, no other sound could be heard. Father, I know you don't want to see me. Don't want me to know you're here. You must have your reasons. But have you ever thought about my feelings? Ever since you left, I've been looking for you every day. To find you, I even stayed in the Land of Ruins for more than 20 years. Do you think it was easy for me? But even so, I have never complained, because I know that this is what we should do as children. But what about you? Have you ever fulfilled the responsibility of a father? If you don't have this ability, why did you give birth to me? The more Ren Wushuang spoke, the more emotional she became. In the end, she was almost screaming, and tears flowed like a spring. Sigh. Qin Feiyang, who was standing at the back, could not help but let out a long sigh. He walked to Ren Wushuang's side, looked down at the canyon, and said, Uncle Rin, we're about to go to the imperial capital. Before we leave, you should come out and see your sister. Ren Wushuang shouted, Yes, come out, I promise, I won't ask anything. Shuang, or why are you doing this? A moment later, a long sigh sounded in the canyon. Then, a black shadow swept out of the storm and landed on the Iron Chain Bridge. It was Rin Duxing. Father, it's really you. Looking at the familiar face, Ren Wushuang's eyes trembled, and tears flowed down her face. She immediately ran up the Iron Chain Bridge and went straight to Ren Duxing. Ren Duxing's eyes were full of love, and he opened his arms. When his daughter went into his arms, his eyes couldn't help but moisten. Father, I missed you so much. Ren Wushuang murmured. The familiar breath, the warm embrace, made her feel the fatherly love she had not felt for a long time. But hearing this, Ren Duxing was full of guilt. He whispered, Shuang, Father has wronged you. Can you forgive Father? I've never blamed father. Ren Wushwang shook her head. Ren Duxing's nose was sour, and 2 drops of old tears finally came out of his eyes. Wolf King looked at the father and daughter and murmured, "Little Qinzi, are you jealous?" Who wouldn't be jealous of such a family? But not everyone can have it. After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he looked up at the sky with a very complicated look in his eyes. After a while, he retracted his gaze, glanced at Ren Duxing, waved his hand, and took Wolf King into the castle. Looking at Fatso and Lu Hong, who were still busy, Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "How is it going?" Fatso wiped the sweat on his forehead and said with a smile, "There are too many. It will take at least until tomorrow to sort it out." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and said, "Then put it down first." "What's wrong?" Lu Hong was puzzled. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "We are going to the capital soon. I think it's time to tell you some things." Lu Hong and Fatso looked at each other, immediately put down the medicinal materials in their hands, got up and looked at Qin Feiyang. Luo Qinxue and Lin Yi also opened their eyes one after another. Qin Feiyang looked at Lin Yi and said with a smile, "Haven't you always wanted to know my origin? Now I will tell you that I was indeed born in the capital." Lin Yi's delicate body trembled, but she quickly calmed down and waited for the following words. Qin Feiyang's gaze swept across everyone and the black dragon snake. He smiled and said, "My father is someone you all know, the current emperor of the great Qin Empire." "What?" Lin Yi and Luo Qinxue suddenly got up and looked at Qin Feiyang in disbelief. There were stormy waves in their hearts. The black dragon snake was also shocked to the extreme. As for Wolf King, Pangolin, Fatso, and Lu Hong, they were not surprised because they already knew this. The only thing they wanted to know was why Qin Feiyang came to the Iron Ox town. After a long while, Luo Qinxue recovered and asked, "Are you really the son of the emperor?" "Of course." Qin Feiyang smiled and said. Hearing this, Luo Qinxue looked up and down at Qin Feiyang. Then she actually knelt on the ground. Qin Feiyang's face changed. He hurriedly went up to hold Luo Qinxue and frowned. "Auntie Shui, what are you doing?" Luo Qinxue said in a panic, "You are the prince. Of course, I have to salute." Qin Feiyang smiled helplessly and said, "Auntie Shui, aren't you treating me like this? Don't be like this, and now I'm no longer a prince." "Not a prince." Luo Qinxue was taken aback and wondered why. Qin Feiyang smiled self-deprecatingly and said, "As early as more than 10 years ago, the emperor had already ordered to abolish my identity as a prince. If it weren't for my mother to plead for me, I'm afraid I would have already turned into a pile of soil." "What?" Luo Qinxue and Lin Yi were stunned. Fatso and the others were also trembling physically and mentally. It turned out that all this was related to the emperor. No wonder every time Qin Feiyang's father was mentioned, Qin Feiyang would be furious. However, why did the emperor order to abolish his son? Chapter 666. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and smiled faintly. "My talent was not bad back then. I suddenly became a 9-star martial master when I was 10 years old." A 9-star martial master at the age of 10? Lin Yi's face froze. This talent is not only not bad, it is simply monstrous. But this is even more strange. Qin Feiyang has such amazing talent. It can be said that his future is limitless, but the current emperor actually poisoned him. Is he stupid? Wolf King frowned and asked, "Little Qinzi, what is the reason?" Qin Feiyang shook his head and said, "I don't know the reason." "You don't know?" Wolf King, Fatso, and others looked at each other. Qin Feiyang said, "I remember that when I had a conflict with the eldest prince, my eldest brother, he killed me and seriously injured me." Upon hearing this, Fatso said angrily, "As the eldest brother, he actually killed you. Isn't this too much? What's more, aren't you a 9-star martial master? Why can't you beat him? Haven't you heard of this saying? The most ruthless imperial family. In the imperial palace, there is no kinship at all, only power struggles. And the eldest prince is 8 or 9 years older than me. At that time, he was already a 5-star martial ancestor. I am a 9-star martial master. No matter how heaven-defying I am, I can't be his opponent. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled bitterly. Fatso suddenly said, I see. You continue. Speak slowly. Don't get too excited. Do I look excited to you? Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at him. In the past, he was indeed very aggrieved and angry. Every night he was awakened by nightmares. But now he figured it out. Whatever happened, no matter how much you resent or hate it, it is impossible to change anything. Only by facing it with strength, optimism, and courage can you live more at ease. In short, you can't let the past affect your heart. Gathering his thoughts, Qin Feiyang continued. Although the injuries I suffered that time are very serious, the imperial palace did not lack top-grade healing pills. I woke up the next morning, but not long after I woke up, misfortune befell me. When he said the last sentence, Qin Feiyang's tone obviously changed. Fatso and the others also held their breaths, waiting for Qin Feiyang to continue. After I woke up, I was still reading the historical records in the pavilion outside the bedroom as usual. I remember that it was a rainy day, just as I was engrossed in the movie, for my father's personal bodyguards suddenly appeared and threatened to kill me. At that time, I wasn't mentally prepared at all. I was stunned. Father has always doted on me. How could he kill me? Besides, I didn't do anything wrong. But the 4 guards didn't explain anything. They pulled out their butcher's knives and slashed at my head. Qin Feiyang said his hands couldn't help but clench. Although more than 10 years had passed, every scene and face at that time was clearly imprinted in his mind. At the same time, Fatso and the others couldn't help but feel cold all over, killing without any reason. Was the emperor really so heartless? Lu Hong asked, and then, Of course I wasn't willing. Even if you want me to die, shouldn't you let me die with a clear understanding? I didn't hesitate to call for help from my mother. My mother is very strong. She rushed over in an instant and stopped the 4 guards. But at the same time my father also came. But that kind face was no longer there. It was all indifference. Especially the way he looked at me. That kind of ruthless coldness. I still can't forget it. And no matter how I asked, he didn't say a word. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice, his eyes as sharp as a blade. Fatso said, What about your mother? My mother didn't know the reason. She also asked, but he just wouldn't say. He was determined to kill me. My mother is the person who loves me the most. Of course, she wouldn't allow him to do so. In a rage, she was ready to take me away from the imperial palace. Qin Feiyang said. Lu Hong said, Where to? Qin Feiyang said, My mother's family. Because my grandfather has the ability to protect me. Is your grandfather very strong? Wolf King was surprised. Very strong, but I'm not very sure how strong he is. After all, I was still young at that time. And I've only seen him once since I was young, and it was when I was 5 years old. Now, I don't even remember what he looks like. However, I heard from my mother that my grandfather's family is a hidden family. They are very powerful, and even the emperor has to be courteous to them. Qin Feiyang said, Damn, your background is so strong? Fatso was dumbfounded. Not only did he have a mother who was the empress, but he also had a grandfather who even the emperor was afraid of. This was simply awesome. Since your grandfather is so strong, why didn't he come to save you back then? Lu Hong was suspicious. Qin Feiyang said, I heard from my mother that my grandfather's family is very far from the imperial palace. At that time, things happened so suddenly that there was no time to inform him. Lu Hong asked, In the end, how did you escape? Upon hearing this question, Qin Feiyang's body and mind suddenly trembled. He closed his eyes, and his face was full of pain. 2 drops of tears even flowed from the corners of his eyes. Lu Hong and the others fell silent and didn't disturb him, because at a glance, they knew that this story was Qin Feiyang's greatest pain. After a long time, Qin Feiyang opened his eyes and sighed. It was my mother who begged the emperor. At that time, my mother was ready to take me away from the imperial palace, but the emperor stopped her and fought with my mother. The emperor was stronger than my mother. In the end, my mother was seriously injured by him. Helpless, my mother knelt on the ground and begged him. Qin Feiyang clenched his hands together tightly, and his eyes were red. When he thought of the scene of his mother kneeling to the emperor in order to save him, his heart was bleeding. He could be killed. He could be humiliated. But humiliating his mother was out of the question. Phew! After a while, Qin Feiyang exhaled a long breath and calmed the anger in his heart. In the end, under my mother's bitter pleading, the emperor changed his mind and didn't kill me. However, he wanted to abolish my cultivation and expel me from the imperial capital, never to return. Moreover, my mother was not allowed to come to me. This is the details of my encounter. After telling this story, Qin Feiyang felt a lot more relaxed. Brother Feiyang, Linny looked at Qin Feiyang with tears streaming down her face. She never thought that Qin Feiyang had such an unbearable past. He must have had a hard time these years. Child, don't be sad. Although you have lost a lot, you have also gained a lot. Look at Wolf King, Fatso, and Lu Hong. They are all your companions. Luo Chenxue stepped forward and comforted him softly. Qin Feiyang glanced at them one by one and bowed. Thank you for your company over the years. Why are you so polite to us? Are you asking for a beating? Wolf King glared at him fiercely. Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed. Fatso suddenly said, Boss, have you ever thought about whether this matter has anything to do with the eldest prince? And Qin Feiyang was taken aback. On the first day, you had a conflict with the eldest prince. But on the second day, the emperor, who has always loved you, turned against you. Why does Fat Lord feel that something is wrong? Fatso frowned. It should have nothing to do with him. That's because he was the one who injured me, not the other way around. Moreover, he was the one who provoked me first. If it really happened because of this, the emperor should punish him. Qin Feiyang said, That's true. Fatso nodded, frowning. He was puzzled. As for the reason, I will slowly investigate it when I enter the imperial capital. Now, I am telling these things not to win your sympathy, but to let you understand my next situation. Qin Feiyang said. Wolf King raised his eyebrows and said, What do you mean? I don't even know if I can survive this trip to the imperial capital. You are all my friends, even my family. I don't want to implicate you. So, I hope that you won't go to the imperial capital. Qin Feiyang's face had a trace of pleading. But, are we the kind of people who are afraid of death? You treat us as friends, and we treat you as friends. Between friends, shouldn't we enjoy joys and sorrows together? Let me tell you, if you say such things again, don't blame us for falling out with you. Fatso and Wolf King said angrily. Lu Hong's brows were tightly knitted, and she was a little unhappy. Qin Feiyang sighed. I don't want to lose you. We don't want to see you fight alone. Anyway, I must go to the imperial capital. You can't stop me, even if you want to. Wolf King smiled coldly. Yes. Fatso nodded and snorted. You want to enjoy glory and wealth alone. Dream on. You. Qin Feiyang looked at the man and the wolf. He was quite angry, but more than that, he was touched. In life, one didn't need too many friends, as long as they were sincere. Luo Chenxue glanced at them and said with a smile, Feiyang, if you really treat them as friends, don't say such things in the future, because it will only hurt their hearts. Qin Feiyang looked at Luo Chenxue and couldn't help but frown. Okay, don't say anything. Let them go. If you really leave them in the spiritual state, they won't be able to cultivate in peace. Besides, I don't feel at ease leaving them here, because, except for you, no one can restrain them. At that time, I don't know what trouble they will cause. As for me, it's better not to go. With my little strength, I will only be a burden to you if I go." Luo Qianxue shook her head and smiled. "Aunt Xue." Qin Feiyang's eyes were a little wet. In fact, he was most worried about Luo Qianxue, because Luo Qianxue was really good to him. He didn't want this woman who was like a mother to be hurt. Originally, he didn't know how to say it, but he didn't expect Luo Qianxue to be so considerate and bring it up herself. Then, he looked at Fatso and the others. Looking at the stubbornness and persistence on their faces, he sighed deeply and said with a smile, "As long as you are not afraid of death, then go." "TSK, Fat Lord even dares to enter the tiger's den, let alone the imperial capital?" Fatso had a look of disdain. "Keep bragging." Wolf King rolled his eyes at him, turned to Qin Feiyang, and said with a sneaky smile, "Hee, I am still waiting to be the guardian beast of the great Qin Empire. You guys." Chapter 667. Then, Qin Feiyang looked at Yi again. At this moment, she was lowering her head and grabbing her belt tightly with both hands. Her eyes were filled with struggle. Qin Feiyang didn't say anything. She needed to make this decision herself. He looked at the black dragon snake and the pangolin and asked, "Are you guys going?" "Of course," the pangolin said without hesitation. After tasting the benefits of opening the door of potential, it had already made up its mind to follow these fiends for the rest of its life. But the black dragon snake hesitated. Suddenly, it looked at Qin Feiyang and cautiously asked, "If this emperor says I'm not going, will you kill me to silence me?" Qin Feiyang laughed. "Although you and I haven't been together for long, I respect your choice, not to mention that my original intention was for you to stay in the spirit state." "If that's the case, then," the black dragon snake struggled for a moment and gritted its teeth. "At most, I'll die, I'll go." It was taking a gamble. Although this trip to the imperial capital pointed to disaster, it was still an opportunity. If Qin Feiyang really became the emperor of the great Qin Empire, then it would be a meritorious minister. Wouldn't it have a meteoric rise in the future? Qin Feiyang smiled and looked at Lu Hong and Fatso. "Continue to organize the herbs." The two nodded. Then Qin Feiyang appeared at the bridge with Wolf King and looked up at Ren Duxing and Ren Wushuang. The father and daughter stood on the iron chain bridge, talking and laughing, looking exceptionally warm. Sensing Qin Feiyang's aura, Ren Duxing also looked at Qin Feiyang and nodded with a smile. Qin Feiyang also revealed a smile. Then, Ren Duxing looked down at Ren Wushuang and smiled. "Shuang-er, you should go back." Ren Wushuang's expression changed and she hurriedly said, "But I still want to accompany father for a while." Ren Duxing rubbed Ren Wushuang's head lovingly and said with a smile, "Silly boy, won't you have another chance in the future?" But Ren Wushuang still wanted to say something. Ren Duxing shook his head and said with a smile, "Don't hesitate. You've grown up now. You should understand that all good things must come to an end." Ren Wushuang pouted, feeling wronged, and said, "Then can you tell me why you're staying here?" "No. Didn't you just say that you won't ask anything?" Ren Duxing smiled. "All right." Ren Wushuang lowered his head. His eyes filled with reluctance. Alas! Seeing this, Ren Duxing couldn't help but sigh inwardly. With a wave of his hand, he swept up Ren Wushuang and flew towards Qin Feiyang and Wolf King. Several breaths later, the father and daughter landed at the end of the bridge, but Ren Duxing did not leave the iron chain bridge. "Uncle Ren." Qin Feiyang bowed. Ren Duxing sized up Qin Feiyang and nodded. "You broke through to 1 star were master so quickly, not bad." Qin Feiyang laughed. "Uncle Ren's strength is also unfathomable. Before long I can only look up to you." Ren Duxing shook his head and laughed. He lowered his head and looked at Ren Wuxuang, who was beside him, and said, Shuang, I have some personal matters to discuss with Qin Feiyang. You should leave first. Ren Wuxuang frowned and said angrily, You have something to hide from me again. What do you take me for? Ren Duxing said, Shuang, don't be willful. Father didn't let you know for your own good. Humph. Ren Wuxuang coldly snorted, walked down the iron chain bridge and walked into the distance. Before leaving, she glared fiercely at Qin Feiyang. Who did I offend? Qin Feiyang was a little depressed. After Ren Wuxuang walked away, Ren Duxing said apologetically, Feiyang, this girl of mine is like this, don't mind her. Do I dare to mind? Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly, sorted out his emotions, and asked suspiciously, Uncle Ren, what are you trying to say? Ren Duxing asked, How many people won the 9 regions war this time? Let me think. Wan Qiu, Feng Wuxia, the twin sisters Ling Yu, and the other 3, Tan Wu. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment and said, If we don't count the people from our spirit state, there are a total of 9 people. Ren Duxing said, Then who are the people from our spirit state? Qin Feiyang said, Lu Xingqian, Dong Zhengyang's sister Xinmei. Ren Duxing pondered for a moment and asked, Then do you feel that there is something wrong with anyone? Something wrong? Qin Feiyang thought carefully for a moment and said, If there is something wrong, it is only Lu Xingqian. What do you mean? Ren Duxing was surprised. First, he is hiding his cultivation level. At first, we all thought he was a 7 stars combat emperor, but in the end, I found that he is stronger than us, a 3-star combat grandmaster. Second, in the 9 Nether Yellow Springs, he secretly helped the people of Kong and Yuzhou several times. Third, he seems to know everything. No matter what he encounters, he knows. Qin Feiyang said. Ren Duxing frowned. Why would he help the people of Kong and Yuzhou? I don't know. I asked, but he didn't say, but when Qin Feiyang said this, his eyebrows also furrowed. Ren Duxing asked, But what? He told me that he means me no harm, and he also said that he owes me a favor. But I really can't remember when I helped him. Qin Feiyang was confused. You single-handedly destroyed the Lu family. He should hate you. It seems that there is something wrong with this person. Ren Duxing muttered and said, Feiyang, Uncle Ren has a request. What is it? Qin Feiyang was confused. Do you remember that I told you that among the people who participated in the 9 states battle, there's a high chance that Mu Tianyang's lackeys are among them? Ren Duxing said in a deep voice. Qin Feiyang's pupil shrank, and he said in surprise, You mean this person is Lu Xingqian? I don't know, but he is the most worthy of our attention. So, I want to ask you to do everything possible to grasp his whereabouts after entering the imperial capital. Ren Duxing said. Qin Feiyang frowned and said, Uncle Ren, to be honest, I really don't want to care about these things. Ren Duxing was silent for a moment and said, Feiyang, I know this will put a lot of pressure on you, but I really can't find a suitable person. Qin Feiyang sighed helplessly and said, Well, I'll do my best. Just do your best. Ren Duxing smiled and said, Remember, inform me as soon as you have any news. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded. Ren Duxing waved his hand and said, Then go, work hard, and help me take care of Shuang. I will, goodbye. Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and said goodbye, then turned and walked toward Ren Wuxuang. Whoosh! Ren Duxing looked at the 2 people and the wolf, then jumped into the canyon and disappeared in the storm. During the whole process, Wolf King didn't say a word, as if it was thinking about something. After walking for a while, it said, Little Qin Zi, I don't know if you want to hear something. What is it? Qin Feiyang was stunned and puzzled. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. We can cooperate with Mu Tianyang and use him to destroy your enemy in the imperial capital. Wolf King said, a cold light flashing in its eyes. Not bad. You know how to use your brain to think. Qin Feiyang looked at it in surprise and shook his head. But I won't do that, because cooperating with Mu Tianyang is tantamount to asking a tiger for its skin. Moreover, his goal is to destroy the great Qin Empire, and I just want revenge. Wolf King asked, when the time comes, what if he really wants to destroy the great Qin Empire? Public is public, private is private. I won't sit back and do nothing, because no matter what happens, the power of the bloodline flowing in my body will never change. No one can take away the empire of the great Qin Empire. Qin Feiyang said, his voice sonorous and powerful. Wolf King's pupils contracted. Qin Feiyang's last sentence really gave it a big fright. It seemed that there was bound to be a bloody storm in the future. Feiyang, where is my father? At this time, Ran Wushuang ran over and asked anxiously. Qin Feiyang turned his head to look at the empty iron chain bridge and said with a smile, he should have left. Left? Ran Wushuang's face froze, and she said angrily, he didn't even say goodbye to me. Does he still care about me, his daughter? Qin Feiyang sighed. Okay, don't complain. Uncle Rin doesn't have it easy. Ran Wushuang frowned, looked up and down Qin Feiyang for a moment, and said, brother, tell me the truth. Do you know everything about my father? What is it? Qin Feiyang looked confused. Ran Wushuang's forehead suddenly creased a row of black lines, and she said angrily, stop pretending. Tell me, why did he stay here? Oh my God, I really don't know. If you want to know, go ask your father. Don't pester me all the time, okay? Qin Feiyang was helpless to the extreme. If he was willing to tell me, why would I ask you? Ren Wushuang complained, grabbed Qin Feiyang's arm and said with a smile, Feiyang, can you just tell sister? If the hard way didn't work, then she would use the soft way. But Qin Feiyang didn't fall for it at all. He forcefully pried Ren Wushuang's fingers away, opened a teleportation door, and rushed in without looking back. Brat, I'm not done with you. Ren Wushuang stomped her feet angrily and immediately chased in. Prefecture City, East City Treasure Pavilion. In the lounge. This brat is back. Why didn't he come to find me? Do I have to take the initiative to find him every time? He really doesn't know how to respect the old and love the young. Yin Yuanming paced back and forth in the room, looking extremely anxious. This brat was naturally referring to Qin Feiyang. Not long after Qin Feiyang returned, he received the news and immediately returned to the lounge to wait. Of course, he wasn't missing Qin Feiyang but those top-grade pills. But after waiting for so long, Qin Feiyang didn't come, and he couldn't help but feel resentment in his heart. Bastard, bastard. He cursed angrily and took out the image crystal. Swish! But at this moment, 2 people and a wolf appeared in the lounge out of thin air. Yin Yuanming was stunned. He turned his head and his face immediately surged with ecstasy. Who else could it be but Qin Feiyang? He immediately went up and said with a smile, Brother Qin, you're back. Why didn't you inform me? I could have gone to welcome you. Old fox, if you want the pills, just say it. Don't be so hypocritical, okay? Wolf King picked his nose and said disdainfully. Yin Yuanming's expression froze, and he said angrily, What are you talking about? Let me tell you, Wolf Cub, my feelings for Brother Qin can be witnessed by heaven and earth. Qin Feiyang's face twitched. He even used heaven and earth as a witness. This old fox was really going all out for the pills. You're bragging. Wolf King glanced at Yin Yuanming disdainfully and jumped to the ground. He knocked here and there, as if he was looking for something. Stop looking. There's no treasure here. Chapter 668. Qin Feiyang walked to the side of the tea table and sat on the chair. Yin Yuanming also went forward, picked up the teapot and poured tea, completely ignoring Ren Wushuang beside him. Ren Wushuang frowned and said, Steward Yin, is my presence so insignificant? Yin Yuanming was stunned. He turned his head and his face changed slightly. He hurriedly said, "Oh, isn't this Miss Rin? When did you come?" Qin Feiyang just picked up the teacup and took a sip. When he heard this, he directly spat it out. What kind of eyesight did this old fox have? She had been standing there for a long time and actually didn't notice. It seemed that Yin Yuanming was going to offend this Mississippi. As expected, Ren Wushuang's face suddenly darkened. She clenched her jade-like hands and stared fiercely at Yin Yuanming. "Cough, cough!" Qin Feiyang coughed and kindly reminded him she came with me. "What?" Yin Yuanming suddenly changed color and smiled apologetically. "Miss Rin, I'm sorry, it's all my fault. Please sit down." "Humph!" Ren Wushuang snorted coldly and sat opposite Qin Feiyang. Her face was very ugly. "What is this great aunt doing here?" Yin Yuanming was puzzled. He secretly wiped his sweat, turned around and walked to the side of the tea table, and warmly greeted her. Qin Feiyang put down the teacup and said with a faint smile, "Don't be so polite, let's talk business." "Business?" Yin Yuanming was stunned and said suspiciously, "Aren't you here to deliver the elixir?" "You only have eyes for the elixir?" Qin Feiyang frowned. "Nonsense, I'm a businessman. Naturally, I'm talking business. Do you think I'll talk about love with you?" Yin Yuanming rolled his eyes. Qin Feiyang's face twitched and said helplessly, "I just came back and didn't have time to refine the elixir. Now I'm here to ask you for a favor." "What is it?" Yin Yuanming put down the teacup and looked at him suspiciously. Qin Feiyang said, "I have a very important person that I want to keep in your treasure pavilion." "Who?" Yin Yuanming asked. "Her name is Luo Qinxue." Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and Luo Qinxue instantly appeared out of thin air. Luo Qinxue bowed and said, "Greetings, manager." You're welcome. Yin Yuanming waved his hands repeatedly. What a joke. This brat had already said that this woman was very important to him. How could he still dare to put on airs? After sizing up Luo Qinxue for a moment, Yin Yuanming turned to look at Qin Feiyang. He frowned and said, "Brother Qin, based on our relationship, I will definitely help you with this small matter. But you also know that my treasure pavilion is a place to do business. Don't worry about it." Auntie Shui was the pavilion master of the precious treasure pavilion in Iron Ox Town. Later on, he even managed the treasure pavilion in Yen City. Aunt Shui knows the tricks of Zhen, Bao Pavilion, like the back of her hand. Qin Feiyang said with a faint smile. Yin Yuanming was stunned and said with a smile, "So she is one of us." Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "I wonder if you have heard of Jiang Jingyi?" "Of course I have. He was the previous chief pavilion master of the Yen County. He was very responsible and very capable. Our chief pavilion master even planned to transfer him to the state capital. Unfortunately, he died young." Yin Yuanming sighed. Qin Feiyang said Auntie Shui was his wife. "What?" Yin Yuanming suddenly stood up and looked at Luo Qinxue in disbelief. He asked, "You are husband and wife?" "Yes." Luo Qinxue nodded, looking a little disappointed. "I didn't expect to meet Jiang Jingyi's widow. Okay. I will go to the chief pavilion master later and arrange a position for you." Yin Yuanming said. "Thank you." Luo Qinxue bowed and thanked him. I said, "You don't have to be so polite. Putting aside the relationship with Qin Feiyang, just talking about Jiang Jingyi, we have to take good care of you." Yin Yuanming smiled. "Qin Feiyang said you said it. If I am in the capital and hear that Auntie Shui is wronged, I will not forgive you." Yin Yuanming straightened his back and said, "Okay, if that day comes, I will let you do whatever you want." "Thank you." Qin Feiyang stood up and cupped his hands to thank him. If he wanted to keep Luo Qinxue in the spiritual state, he had to arrange a place for her. And Zhen, Bao Pavilion in the capital was undoubtedly the best place. He could rest assured if she stayed here. Yin Yuanming smiled and said, "Brother Qin, We are done talking about Luo Qinxue. Shall we talk about the elixir now? Qin Feiyang said, Okay, give me a price. I will make it right away. So straightforward. Yin Yuanming was stunned. Then he was overjoyed and said with a smile, Then I will say it. 3,000 red fire glaze elixirs, 500 potential elixirs, and 100,000 each of the other supreme grade elixirs. Qin Feiyang's face darkened and his veins bulged. Wasn't this an exorbitant demand? I say, are you looking for trouble? Wolf King also looked at Yin Yuanming with bad intentions. Don't misunderstand. We will provide all the herbs ourselves. You are only responsible for making the elixirs. Yin Yuanming said. Huh. Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned and frowned. Do you have so many herbs for potential elixirs and red fire glaze elixirs? Of course. To tell you the truth, the Chief Pavilion Master has long expected that you will definitely enter the capital in the end. So, in the years when you participated in the Battle of the 9 States, the Chief Pavilion Master personally went to the other 8 states to collect a large number of herbs. Yin Yuanming smiled sinisterly. Qin Feiyang and Wolf King looked at each other. They didn't expect the Chief Pavilion Master to be even crazier than them. Qin Feiyang joked, Aren't you afraid that the prefecture masters of the other 8 states will find trouble with you after learning about this? We bought it with money openly. What right do they have to find trouble with us? Yin Yuanming was disdainful. You guys are awesome. Qin Feiyang gave them a thumbs up and said with a smile, But you also know my rules. The elixirs refined must be divided equally between us. This. Yin Yuanming frowned and said with a flattering smile, Brother Qin, you are going to the capital soon and may not come back in this life. Can you give us a discount? What's more, our friendship is so deep. Can you just treat it as a farewell gift to us before we part ways? He added. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and stretched out 3 fingers. 30, 70. This is my bottom line. Deal. Yin Yuanming nodded decisively. After all, after being together for so long, he knew Qin Feiyang very well. It was impossible for him to help the Treasure Pavilion refine elixirs for free. Therefore, he was already very satisfied to be able to negotiate a 30-70 split. Boom! At this time, a powerful aura suddenly descended over the city. At this moment, everyone in the city was alarmed. In the resting room, Qin Feiyang and the others were also bewildered. Boom! Following closely, another terrifying aura descended over the city, one after another. Ren Wushuang frowned and said, Could it be that someone from the capital came to pick us up? No, it was the previous prefecture master who took you to the capital. The capital will not send anyone personally. Besides, no one from the capital will come if nothing particularly important happens. Besides, although these auras are powerful, they are still a lot worse than the people from the capital. According to my deduction, they should be at the same level as the prefecture master. Yin Yuanming said. At the same level as Grandpa, Ren Wushuang pondered for a while and said in surprise, Could it be the prefecture masters of the other 8 states? It's possible. Yin Yuanming nodded and frowned. But why did he come to our spiritual state? Qin Feiyang said, It should be for me. You? Yin Yuanming was suspicious. Qin Feiyang said with a faint smile, I killed many of their people in the 9 levels of hell and even wiped out several states. Yin Yuanming looked at him in a daze and shook his head with a wry smile. He is indeed a ferocious guy. Don't worry, with the prefecture master here, they won't dare to do anything to you. I'll go get the herbs now. After saying that, Yin Yuanming turned around and strode out of the lounge. After watching Yin Yuanming leave, Wolf King's eyes flashed coldly and said, Little Qin Zi, do you want to take the opportunity to go to Yinzhou? What do you mean? Qin Feiyang frowned. Wolf King sneered and said, Fatso's blood feud, have you forgotten? Of course not. Qin Feiyang said. What are you talking about? What blood feud does Fatso have? Ran Wushuang looked at the man and wolf in confusion. Wolf King smiled mysteriously and said, Little girl Ren, there are some things you'd better not know. Ren Wushuang was about to get angry when Qin Feiyang said, Sister, can you help me see if the prefecture master of Yunzhou is here? Ren Wushuang snorted and said, You don't want to tell me. Why should I help you? If you don't go, I will. It's no big deal. Wolf King smiled disdainfully, asked Qin Feiyang for 2 portals, and left directly. Bastard, wolf cub! Ren Wushuang stomped her feet in anger and glared at Qin Feiyang. She said, If you don't tell me why my father stayed in the ruins, I'll keep pestering you. It doesn't matter. It's quite eye-catching to have a beautiful woman by my side. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. You're shameless, Ren Wushuang said angrily, gnashing her teeth and glaring at him. Qin Feiyang didn't mind and smiled. Tap, tap. With the sound of footsteps, Yin Yuanming came back with a chinquan bag in his hand. He glanced around the room and asked suspiciously, Where's Ruffian Wolf? Qin Feiyang said he went to ask for information. Oh, Yin Yuanming nodded and handed the chinquan bag to Qin Feiyang. He said with a smile, When can I get the elixir? Qin Feiyang glanced at the medicinal herbs in the chinquan bag and put them into the castle. He said with a faint smile, When it's done, I'll get someone to send it to you. Okay. Yin Yuanming nodded repeatedly with a smile on his face. Swish. At this time, Wolf King appeared out of thin air and said, That old witch is here. She's now in the old master's meeting hall. Okay, she's here to settle the score with us, so we'll go and raid her nest. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed with a sharp light. Feiyang, although the Yunzhou prefecture governor is not here, there are still 10 commanders. Fatso's enemies are also very strong. It's better to be careful. Luo Qinshui reminded. Qin Feiyang said, And Shui, I know. Chapter 669. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded, grabbed Luo Qinshui's hand and said, Auntie Shui, when I go to the capital, I won't come to see you. You must take care of yourself. I will. Don't worry and go on an adventure. Luo Qinshui smiled, but her eyes were wet. After being together for so long, she had long regarded Qin Feiyang as her own son. Now that they had parted, she didn't know when they would be reunited. Seeing this, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but feel sad and said, When I settle down in the capital, I will definitely come back to pick you up. Okay, I'll wait for you. Luo Qinshui nodded, feeling gratified. She really couldn't figure out why the emperor wanted to harm such a sensible child. I'm leaving. After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he resolutely let go of Luo Qinshui's hand, opened a portal, and left with Wolf King. Bastard, don't think about leaving me behind. Ren Wushuang said angrily and was about to chase after him, but at this time, Luo Qinshui grabbed her wrist, shook her head, and said with a smile, Child, don't chase after him. Feiyang is a very trustworthy person. Since he promised your father, no matter how you pester him, he won't say anything. Ren Wushuang said anxiously, but Luo Qinshui smiled and said, Okay, stop talking. Stay here and chat with me. Okay. Ren Wushuang nodded, but in her heart, she cursed Qin Feiyang for being a bastard. Yin Yuanming, who was next to them, looked surprised. Didn't Ren Wushuang's father die a long time ago? But from their conversation, why was it that this Ren Duxing was still alive? Also, Qin Feiyang and Ruffian Wolf actually wanted to raid the Yunzhou mansion master's lair. Were they really not afraid of death? No, all the medicinal materials are with them. They can't die in Yunzhou. Muttering to himself, Yin Yuanming looked up at Ren Wushuang and smiled. I have something to discuss with the chief pavilion master. You guys take your time. Without waiting for their response, he hurriedly left. Meanwhile, in the sky above a valley in the cloud state, swish, Qin Feiyang and Wolf King appeared out of thin air. The valley was surrounded by mountains on all sides, and there were no entrances or exits. One could only enter from a high altitude. Within the valley it was about half a mile long. The ground was very flat and covered with lush green weeds. Between the bushes there were also wild flowers in full bloom, their fragrance assailing their nostrils. Furthermore, there was a clear stream that meandered through the entire valley. From time to time a small fish would jump out, adding some liveliness to the valley. In the east of the valley there was a small forest. The trees were not tall, but they were lush and full of life. Through the gaps between the leaves, he could faintly see an old wooden building. Behind the small wooden building, there was a cemetery that emitted a sorrowful aura. Qin Feiyang glanced at the valley and waved his hand. Fatso immediately appeared beside him. He had heard the conversation between Qin Feiyang and Wolf King in the castle, so he was already prepared. At this moment, looking at the valley below, his entire body suddenly exuded a sense of sorrow and a dense, killing intent. Because this was the place where his father and family were buried. "Who is it?" Suddenly, a vigilant shout sounded. Whoosh! Following closely, accompanied by the sound of something breaking through the air, an old man in black rushed out of the valley and landed in front of the two men and the wolf. The old man was skinny and had white hair. His eyes were extremely gloomy, but when he saw Fatso, it was as if an iceberg had melted. His old face was full of smiles. Fatso said, "Uncle Hai, I'm back." That's right. This person was the housekeeper of the Situ family, Situ Hai. Situ Hai walked in front of Fatso and reached out his trembling hand to touch Fatso's face. He said, "Child, it's been a few years since we last met. How have you been these years?" "Very good." Fatso nodded repeatedly and said with a smile, "Uncle Hai, let me tell you a piece of good news. I've passed the great 9 states battle." "What?" Situ Hai's old body trembled. He said in surprise, "You're not lying to me?" "Why would I lie to you? I'll be able to enter the imperial capital soon." Fatso said, "Haha, the heavens didn't destroy my Situ family." Situ Hai immediately looked up to the sky and laughed, tears flowing down his old face. Back then, when the Situ family was exterminated, he was so desperate, thinking that the Situ family would never be able to return to the past. However, he never expected that the child with the worst talent and the least hope would not only succeed in turning the tide and transform into a 1-in-a-million genius, but he also completed the great 9 states battle and obtained the qualification to enter the imperial capital. In his heart, a raging flame of hope was ignited. Sooner or later, the Situ family would rise again and even surpass the glory of the past. Suddenly, he knelt in the void and looked at Qin Feiyang. He said, "Little brother, thank you for helping Tianyu. This old man has nothing to repay you with. Old man, please get up. Fatso and I are brothers. It's only right for me to help him." Qin Feiyang quickly went forward and helped Situ Hai up. Situ Hai said, "It's Tianyu's blessing to have a brother like you." "Uncle Hai, what are you talking about? I'm not bad either, okay?" Fatso grumbled unhappily. Yes. You're not bad at all. Every descendant of the Situ family is a genius." Situ Hai laughed. "It's not as exaggerated as you say." Fatso scratched his head awkwardly. "Let's go. We'll go down and tell your father and mother this good news. They'll definitely be proud of you when they hear about it in the underworld." Situ Hai grabbed Fatso's hand and flew down. Fatso said, "Boss, wait for me." Qin Feiyang nodded. After Fatso and Situ Hai entered the cemetery, Qin Feiyang lowered his head and muttered. Wolf King asked curiously, "What are you thinking about?" Qin Feiyang said, "I feel that with our strength, it's not enough to avenge Fatso." "What do you mean?" Wolf King frowned. "Just like what Aunt Shue said. Although the Yun State's mansion master isn't here, there are still the 10 great commanders, the precious treasure pavilion, and the sacred palace's hall masters. For example, the Pill Hall's hall master. We've fought with him before. As a 3-star battle sect, he's extremely powerful. However, I'm not worried about these people. The person I'm worried about the most is the previous mansion master of the Yun State. Qin Feiyong said in a deep voice. Wolf King's pupils shrunk. The ugly old woman said that she was even more powerful than the old man. Then the previous mansion master of the Yun State must be ridiculously powerful. If they alerted this person, not only would they not be able to avenge Fatso, but they would also be consigned to eternal damnation. Wolf King said, "Why don't we wait a little longer?" Qin Feiyong shook his head and said, "The arrow is already on the bow. We have to shoot it." After saying that, he took out the image crystal. "What are you doing?" Wolf King was suspicious. "Find someone to help us. With him around, it'll be hard for us to die." Qin Feiyong said with a smile. A strand of battle chi entered the image crystal. Soon a figure appeared. It was Lu Xingqian. Lu Xingqian asked with a smile, "Brother Qin, do you have any orders?" Qin Feiyong said, "There's something I'd like to ask you for help with." "What is it?" Lu Xingqian was puzzled. Qin Feiyong said, "Let's talk about it when you're here. I'm in the Yun State now." "What?" Lu Xingqian was dumbfounded. He said, speechlessly, "You've just come back and you're already in the Yun State. You really can't stop. Give me the coordinates. I'll go there immediately." "Thank you." Qin Feiyong thanked him. After giving the coordinates to Lu Xingqian, he turned off the image crystal. At the same time, in the cemetery. "What? You came back this time to destroy the Xia, Yuan, and He families?" Situ Hai looked at Fatso in shock. "Yes." Fatso nodded. His eyes flashed with a cold light. "You can't do that. You're not strong enough yet. You'll be courting death if you go there." Situ Hai said anxiously. Fatso smiled and comforted him. "Uncle Hai, don't worry. If I'm not confident, I won't do it." "No. Now that you've obtained the qualification to enter the imperial capital, your future is bright. I can't let you lose your life because of this. We'll definitely take revenge for this, but not now. Tianyu, listen to Uncle Hai's advice. Don't be stupid. There will be plenty of opportunities in the future." Situ Hai tried his best to persuade him. Now, Fatso was the only hope of the Situ family, so no matter what, he had to protect Fatso well. Fatso shook his head and said expressionlessly, "I've made up my mind. Uncle Hai, don't try to persuade me." Then he knelt in front of his parents' tombstones and said firmly, "Father, Mother, all the clansmen, please rest assured. I'll definitely make those damned bastards pay with their blood." After that, Fatso suddenly got up and flew towards Qin Feiyong and Wolf King. "Tianyu, listen to me, don't be impulsive." Situ Hai hurriedly chased after him. When Fatso flew in front of Qin Feiyong, he immediately said, "Boss, we can go now." Qin Feiyong laughed. "There's no rush. Let's wait for someone first." "Who are we waiting for?" Fatso was puzzled. Qin Feiyong said, "Lu Xingqian." "Him?" Fatso frowned and said, "Would he be so kind to help us?" Who said, "I'm not that kind. In fact, I'm also a very loyal person." At this moment, a faint laugh sounded, and Lu Xingqian appeared out of thin air. "He really came?" Fatso was surprised. Lu Xingqian nodded to Qin Feiyong, then looked at Fatso and said, "Don't you know that it's very immoral to speak ill of others behind their backs?" "About this, I apologize." Fatso laughed dryly. Lu Xingqian shook his head and laughed. At this time, Situ Hai caught up and said anxiously, "Tianyu, you really can't go. Can you listen to me for once?" Glancing at Situ Hai, Lu Xingqian looked at Qin Feiyong and frowned. "What's the matter?" Qin Feiyong briefly explained the situation. After listening, Lu Xingqian's face darkened, He glanced at the two men and the wolf and said, "This is not a child's play. Have you thought about it?" "Of course." Fatso nodded without hesitation. Lu Xingqian pondered for a moment and nodded. "Okay, I'll help you. It's also a favor to Qin Feiyang. Although I've always disliked you, I really have to thank you this time." Fatso cupped his hands and said. Lu Xingqian waved his hand and smiled. "It's no big deal. Let's go." "Are you all crazy?" Situ Hai said angrily. "Uncle Hai, you can rest assured. We will definitely be able to get away safely." Fatso laughed. "You!" Situ Hai was extremely angry, but in the end he sighed and said, "Fine, do as you wish, but you have to bring me along." Fatso frowned. "Although I'm not strong enough, I've been paying attention to the movements of the three great families all these years. I know their background and can definitely help you. Moreover, I also want to see the destruction of the three great families with my own eyes." Situ Hai said. This, Fatso looked at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang thought for a moment and said with a smile, "It's okay. If you want to go, go." "Thank you, little brother." Situ Hai cupped his hands and thanked him, then took out a teleportation door and quickly opened it. Subsequently, Chapter 670. Yunzhou City. A huge mansion was located in the central area of the East City. It was magnificent and extraordinary. Above the gate of the mansion there was a golden plaque. It was made of gold. On it there were two bold and powerful words. Xia family. The Xia family status in Yunzhou was comparable to the Lu family in Lingzhou, because the Xia family's ancestor, Xia Changfeng, was the governor of the East City. Moreover, because Xia Changfeng was deeply loved by the governor of Yunzhou, the Xia family was even more powerful in the East City. Even if it was just a servant of the Xia family, the heads of the top families outside had to be respectful to them. It could be said that in the East City, the Xia family was the master, controlling the fate of countless people. At this moment, in front of the gate of the Xia family's mansion, a large group of people had gathered and were noisy. "For brothers, I beg you, ask young Master Xia to let my granddaughter go. She's still young. You can't hurt her. I'll kowtow to you, I beg you to do her a favor." In front of the crowd, a white-haired old man knelt in front of the gate. The old man's clothes were ragged, his body was covered in blood, his old face was bruised and swollen. But he seemed to have forgotten his pain. Looking at the four guards standing on both sides of the gate, he kept begging and kowtowing. His head was broken, blood flowing all over the ground, and that pair of weak old eyes were full of anxiety. However, the four Xiao family guards remained unmoved. In fact, their faces were filled with impatience. Swish! Suddenly, four people and a wolf landed in the sky above the Xia family's gate. It was Qin Feiyang and the others. They did not hide their aura. As soon as they appeared, the people below noticed and immediately looked up. What? How dare they stand in the sky above the Xia family's gate? Don't they know that this kind of behavior of looking down on the Xia family will bring about a fatal disaster? The pupils of the group of people shrank. At the same time, the four guards also looked up at Qin Feiyang and the others. Their faces suddenly became cold. How dare you stand in the sky above the Xia family's gate? You must have eaten the heart of a leopard. Get down here immediately, kowtow and apologize. The four people shouted. Qin Feiyang and the others, who were scanning the Xia family mansion, raised their eyebrows and looked down at the crowd. In the end, their gazes all landed on the four guards. Wolf King chuckled and said, "This Xia clan is really impressive." This is nothing strange. The Xia family has always liked to bully others. Do you see the old man kneeling at the door? He must be one of the victims. Situ Hai sneered. He didn't hide his disgust at all. Let's go down and take a look. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and brought Wolf King and Fatso to the old man's side. Seeing this, The 4 guards thought that Qin Feiyang and the others were scared. One of them sneered, "At least you know what's good for you. Quickly kneel down and apologize." However, Qin Feiyang and the others simply ignored them. Fatso squatted on the ground and asked, "Old man, why are you kneeling here?" "The young master of the Xia family took away my granddaughter. My granddaughter is only 15. What a sin!" The old man cried out sadly. Sure enough, Situ Hai sighed deeply. The fatty's eyes were also filled with rage. He abruptly raised his head to look the 4 guards and shouted, "How dare you bully men and seize women in broad daylight? Do you still have any respect for the law?" "The law. Ha ha! Damn fat pig, you can't even protect yourself now, and you still want to fight for him. Let me tell you, in this East City, my Xia family is the law." The 4 people laughed with ridicule. "You're courting death." Fatso slowly got up, his eyes filled with killing intent. "Little brother, don't do anything." Seeing this, the old man hurriedly grabbed Fatso and said, "Little brother, thank you, but you'd better stay out of it, because you can't afford to offend the Xia family." Did you hear that? The Xia family is not something you can offend. In this place, even if you are a tiger, you have to lie there obediently. "Kneel down for me," the 4 guards shouted. Their overbearing attitude showed that they did not put these people in their eyes at all. Lu Xingchen laughed and said, "Brother Qin, they are more arrogant than you." Qin Feiyang's face twitched and said helplessly, "Can you not drag me into everything?" The 2 of them whispered and were seen by a guard. The guard frowned and shouted, "What are the 2 of you whispering about? I told you to kneel down, didn't you hear me? Do you have to force us to fight?" Lu Xingchen shrunk his neck and said timidly, "Big brother, I'm a coward. Don't scare me." "Scare you? Ha ha!" The 4 guards laughed, and the disdain in their eyes deepened. How dare they meddle in other people's business with such guts? They really overestimated themselves. Wolf King shook his head and laughed. "Look at how proud they are." "They won't be proud for long." Fatso snorted and looked down at the old man. He smiled and said, "Old man, don't be afraid. Tell me, when did they kidnap your granddaughter?" The old man glanced at them. Seeing that they had an extraordinary temperament and unfathomable aura, his panicked heart gradually calmed down. The old man said, "She was captured not long ago." Fatso asked, "How was she captured?" "Not long ago, my granddaughter and I passed by here. The young master of the Xia family happened to be returning from outside. Although my granddaughter is only 15, she is beautiful. When he saw my granddaughter, he had evil thoughts." The old man said angrily, "He is worse than a beast. Old man, don't worry. I will go and rescue your granddaughter now." Fatso comforted him and turned to the 4 guards. He shouted, "Take me to that beast immediately." "Who are you calling a beast?" The 4 guards immediately frowned. "You are courting death." Fatso's eyes flashed with killing intent. He waved his hand, and 3 streams of battle chi appeared and disappeared between the 3 guards' eyebrows. Ah! 3 cries of agony immediately echoed in the air. There was a bloody hole in between the eyebrows of the 3 guards. Blood was gushing out. Murder! He killed someone in the Xia family. The crowd behind all opened their eyes wide and looked at Fatso in shock. One must know, this was the Xia family. Although he only killed the servants of the Xia family, he would still be punished by the Xia family for this. However, as for the remaining guard, he was filled with terror at this moment, because when Fatso attacked, he realized that he had kicked an iron plate this time. Fatso took a step forward and landed in front of the guard. He smiled and said, "Fat Lord doesn't want to say it again." Okay. As long as you don't kill me, I will take you there immediately." That guard immediately turned around and ran into the mansion, scared witless. Fatso smiled coldly and stepped into the gate of the Xia family. He followed the guard unhurriedly. Qin Feiyang and the others smiled at each other and followed in. They actually barged in so openly. The crowd in front of the gate looked at the backs of Qin Feiyang and the others. They were all stunned. Who are they? How can they be so audacious? I've never seen or heard of them. But one thing is for sure. They will not have a good ending. That's right. In this city, even the Mo family, Yuan family, and He family, who are as famous as the Xiao family, do not dare to barge into the Xiao family. The crowd discussed animatedly. For a moment, the place was in an uproar. In the mansion. Who are you? Stop right there. In a long corridor, more than 10 guards of the Xiao family stood in front of Qin Feiyang and the others. Each of them looked fierce. Die. Fatso did not say anything and directly attacked. His battle qi surged out like a tidal wave. Wherever it went, flesh and blood splattered and screams could be heard. No one was left alive. When he saw that, the guard who led the way was scared out of his wits and collapsed to the ground. What strength! What vicious methods! Who was this malefic? Fatso frowned and said, "If you don't get up, you'll reunite with them." The guard shuddered and hurriedly got up. He ran into a garden and followed a small path. The Xia family was heavily guarded. Basically, there was a sentry every 3 steps and a sentry every 7 steps. However, those guards were all killed mercilessly by Fatso. Along the way, the ground was filled with corpses. Blood dyed the garden and the ground red. The air was filled with a pungent smell of blood as well. It was as though the place had turned into a hell. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Inform the family head and the elders. When the guards in the distance saw Fatso killing in all directions as though there was no one around, their expressions changed and they fled in panic. How dare you! All of a sudden, a loud roar sounded. An old man in black rushed out from a hall and stood in the air. He shouted, "I'm the butler of the Xiao family. If you don't want to die, surrender immediately." A small fry dares to jump out. "You really don't know what you're talking about." Fatso sneered. Without even looking, he waved his hand and the black dragon battle, Qi, soared into the sky. Ah, the old man in black was instantly splattered with blood. What? Even the butler was killed. Seeing that, whether it was the guards of the Xia family or the servants, they could not help but feel chills down their spines. They were terrified to the extreme. How far is it? Fatso frowned and was a little impatient. The guard hurriedly said, "After walking out of this garden and passing through a small bamboo forest, we will reach the Intoxicated Heart Lake where the young master is." Intoxicated Heart Lake. A cold light flashed in Fatso's eyes. In the blink of an eye, a wave of battle qi swept out like a sharp blade and instantly cut the guard's throat. Blood splattered 3 feet on the spot. Whoosh! Following that, Fatso stepped on the return to 1 step and crazily slaughtered along the way. Qin Feiyang and the others followed behind him and just silently watched the scene. Not long after, they passed through the small bamboo forest and stopped in front of a lake of about 100 feet. The lake was very calm. The lake water was very clear. On the opposite shore, there was a small, exquisite attic. Faintly, a helpless cry for help could be heard coming from the attic. Whoosh! Fatso jumped up and instantly landed on the opposite shore of the lake. He kicked open the door of the attic and walked in. "Who are you? How dare you ruin my good thing? Do you want to die?" Immediately, an angry shout rang out in the attic. Ah, but before the voice died away, accompanied by a scream, a 15 or 16-year-old boy with a bare bottom flew out of the window on the 2nd floor and fell into the lake with a thud. After a while, Fatso also flew out of the attic with a girl and landed beside Qin Feiyang and the others. Qin Feiyang and the others looked at the girl. This girl was about 1.65 meters tall. Her skin was delicate and white and her figure was petite and exquisite. She was indeed a little beauty. At this moment, there were a few blood-red palm prints on both sides of her cheeks. Her eyes were teary, and she looked pitiful. When she saw Qin Feiyang and the others, she also looked frightened. What a poor little girl. Sit a high side. Qin Feiyang frowned and looked at Fatso and asked, was she? No. When I went in, that little bastard had just taken off his pants and was directly kicked away by me. Fatso sneered. That's good. Qin Feiyang breathed a sigh of relief. He looked down at the girl and said with a smile, little girl, don't be afraid. We're all here to save you. Seemingly infected by the smile on Qin Feiyang's face, the girl calmed down and asked timidly, where's my grandfather? He's outside. Come, I'll take you there. Qin Feiyang stretched out his hands. The girl looked at Fatso. No matter who encountered such a situation, they would subconsciously believe the person who saved them. And before, it was Fatso who saved her, so she trusted Fatso more. Fatso put down the girl, rubbed her head, and said with a smile, he's my boss. He won't hurt you. Okay. The girl nodded and walked to Qin Feiyang's side. You bastards, don't even think about leaving. But at this moment, a flustered and exasperated roar came from the other side of the lake. As soon as she heard this voice, the girl was so scared that her face turned pale. She quickly hid behind Qin Feiyang and the others, her thin body trembling. Qin Feiyang and the others also looked up and saw that the boy who fell into the lake had climbed ashore. At this moment, he was standing on the shore, staring at them with resentment. He didn't realize that he was still naked. Wolf King laughed and said, shouldn't you go put on your pants first and then threaten us? Huh. The boy was stunned. He looked down and his face suddenly changed. He hurriedly turned and ran to the attic. Don't wear it. You're going to die soon anyway. Fatso sneered, took a step forward, landed behind the boy, grabbed the boy's arm, and directly twisted it up like a little chick. The boy exclaimed and roared, damn Fatso, do you know who I am? Do you know the consequences of offending me? You haven't even grown your hair yet, and you dare to threaten the fat lord? Fatso slapped him in the face. The boy suddenly spat out blood, and half of his face swelled up. Put down my son. At this moment, a thunderous roar exploded. Following closely, a middle-aged man wearing a purple robe broke through the air and stood above the lake, staring angrily at Fatso. The boy hurriedly shouted, Father, kill him quickly! Obviously, this person was the patriarch of the Xia family. Shut up! Fatso coldly shouted and slapped the boy's face again, causing him to see stars. Patriarch Xia clenched his fists and said word by word, I told you to put him down, didn't you hear me? What if the fat lord doesn't let go? Fatso laughed disdainfully. Patriarch Xia said sternly, whether you let go or not, you will die today. So it's like that. Since I'm going to die sooner or later, I might as well kill him and let him accompany me in death. Fatso laughed and grabbed the boy's neck. With a squeeze, the boy immediately suffocated. Father, save me! He stretched out his hand and struggled, desperately calling for help. At the same time, Chapter 671. Fatso laughed. I thought you didn't care. Patriarch Xia's face was gloomy and said, Who are you? Why do you want to deal with my son? If he has offended you, I apologize to you on his behalf. Apologize? Ha ha! Fatso looked up to the sky and laughed. He suddenly looked at Patriarch Xia, his eyes bursting with a strong cold light, and said, This matter is not something that can be made up for with an apology. Patriarch Xia's heart trembled. He looked down at the youth and said angrily, What exactly did you do? Woo woo! The young man wanted to speak, but the fat man had a death grip on his throat, so he couldn't speak. Patriarch Xia looked at Fatso and pleaded, Sir, can we make things clear? If my son is really in the wrong, I am willing to compensate you for all your losses. I'm afraid you can't afford it. Fatso smiled coldly. In fact, the two of them were not talking about the same thing. Fatso, was talking about the blood feud of the past. But Patriarch Xia thought that the youth had offended Fatso. Patriarch Xia said confidently, "Don't worry, my Xia family is powerful. There is nothing that my Xia family can't afford." "Ha! What a big tone!" Fatso laughed. "Shua!" At this moment, Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed, and with the girl he flew to Fatso's side and secretly said, "We'll talk about your matter later. First help her get justice." From the little girl's clothes, it could be seen that her family was not very well off. As for the Xia family, Patriarch Xia had personally admitted that the Xia family was powerful, so of course he had to make him bleed. "All right." Fatso nodded, looked at Patriarch Xia and said, "Your precious son almost ruined her. How do you think you should compensate?" Patriarch Xia looked at the girl and said, "So it's just because of this matter. Speak, what do you want?" "Just because of this matter? It seems that in the eyes of the Xia family's patriarch, this is only a small matter. But do you know? For a woman, what is the most important thing? That is chastity. What's more, she's only a 15-year-old child. Do you know how much damage this has done to her?" Qin Feiyang said angrily, All right. I was wrong. I shouldn't have said that. I apologize to you all. Just tell me, what do you want?" Although it was an apology, there was no sincerity in it at all. In fact, there was even a hint of mockery in his eyes. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed with a cold light. "Give her 1 billion gold coins, and we'll drop the matter." "What? 1 billion?" The Xia family guards and servants who were gathered in the distance all glared at him. 1 billion gold coins. Who knew how many young girls he could buy? Wasn't his appetite a little too big? The girl was also dumbfounded. In her entire life, she had never even seen 1,000 or 2,000, let alone 1 billion. Looking at Patriarch Xia, he was also tongue-tied. He knew that he would be ruthlessly extorted today, but he didn't expect that he would ask for 1 billion right off the bat. Did he think that the Xia family's wealth was free? It was also accumulated little by little. He looked gloomily at Qin Feiyang and said, "Your Excellency, I advise you not to push your luck." Qin Feiyang said expressionlessly, 2 billion. Patriarch Xia clenched his hands, almost going crazy. Unexpectedly, it didn't decrease but increased instead. Did he think that there was no one in the Xia family? Qin Feiyang said, "If you dare to say another word, it will be 3 billion. Patriarch Xia gritted his teeth and said, "Fine, I'll give it to you. But please keep your promise and release my son as soon as you get the gold coins." Qin Feiyang said impatiently, "Don't talk nonsense. Go and prepare." Patriarch Xia took a deep breath and shouted, "Grand Elder, quickly bring 2 billion gold coins." He really gave it? The guards and servants looked at each other. He has to give it. Yes, the young master is the Patriarch's lifeblood. If he doesn't agree, what if they really kill him? He lost 2 billion gold coins in one go. This young master really knows how to cause trouble. Who is to blame? It's all because the Patriarch usually indulges him too much. As long as he is disciplined a little, he wouldn't have fallen to today's situation. The servants discussed softly. Whoosh! About 100 breaths of time, accompanied by the sound of breaking through the air. 10 figures rushed over like lightning. Among these 10 people, there were men and women, and they looked rather old. But everyone's eyes were exceptionally spirited, and the aura emitted from their bodies was stronger than Patriarch Xia's. Obviously, they were the 10 elders of the Xia family. The leader was an old man in white, with a ruddy complexion and white hair, full of spirit. However, at this moment, his gaze was somewhat gloomy. Moreover, among these 10 people, his aura was the strongest. He was a 1-star war master. Swish! The old man in white landed in front of Patriarch Xia and looked gloomily at Qin Feiyang and the others. He frowned and said, "Patriarch, are you really going to give it to him?" "Yes." Patriarch Xia nodded and said, "But if you want to take it away, it won't be that easy." The old man in white suddenly realized and took out a Qiankuan bag from his bosom. He looked at Qin Feiyong and said, "Young man, it's not too late to regret now." Qin Feiyong smiled faintly and said, "In my dictionary there is no such word as regret. Quickly throw it over." "Humph!" The old man in white snorted and threw the Qiankuan bag to Qin Feiyong with force. Qin Feiyong stretched out his hand and caught it. He smiled and said, "Thank you." Patriarch Xia said, "Cut the crap. Quickly let him go." Qin Feiyong turned a deaf ear and looked down at the young girl. He smiled and said, "Little sister, I'll send you to your grandfather now." "Thank you, big brother." The young girl was very sensible, but her face was full of panic, because the eyes of Patriarch Xia and the 10 elders made her feel afraid. "Big brother is here, don't be afraid." Qin Feiyong comforted her with a smile and then flew towards the Xia family's gate with the young girl. Shua! But at this time, the great elder took a step forward and stood in front of Qin Feiyong. He gloomily said, "You haven't let him go, and you want to leave." Qin Feiyong lightly said, "My people are also here. What's the hurry? Can I trust you? What if you take her and run away?" The great elder sneered. Qin Feiyong shook his head and said, "But I also don't trust your Xiao family. What if I let your young master go and you all besiege us?" The great elder's eyes darkened and said, "I don't want to listen to this nonsense. In short, before I let him go, none of you are allowed to leave." Qin Feiyong sighed and said, "You're making it difficult for me." The great elder sneered and said, "You're also making it difficult for me." "Is that so?" Qin Feiyong pursed his lips and smiled. He looked down at the young girl and said with a smile, "Little sister, close your eyes." The young girl obediently closed her eyes at once. The great elder looked at the young girl and looked at Qin Feiyong. He frowned and said, "What do you want to do?" "What do I want to do?" Qin Feiyong laughed and said, "I didn't want to kill in front of this little girl, but there's no other way. You're too insensible." Finished. Qin Feiyong's eyes instantly became extremely sharp, like pieces of blade. Following closely, he raised his arm and pointed his index finger in the air. Boom! An invisible force gushed out like a torrent. In an instant, it swept across the sky and drowned the great elder. Before the great elder of the Xiao family could react, accompanied by a shrill scream, blood splattered across the sky, and not even his bones were left. What? Patriarch Xia's heart trembled. The other 9 elders were also dumbfounded. The people below, even their eyeballs were about to pop out. How powerful was the great elder? But he was actually killed in one move. Was this a dream? However, Qin Feiyong acted as if he had done an extremely ordinary thing. There was not the slightest ripple in his heart. He turned his head and looked at Fatso. He smiled and said, "Do it." Finished. Qin Feiyong took the young girl and flew towards the door without looking back. At the same time, Fatso smiled sinisterly. His big hand suddenly shrank and directly crushed the young boy's neck. Before dying, the young boy let out a painful scream. This scream made Patriarch Xia and the others suddenly come back to their senses. They hurriedly looked over. When they saw the dead young boy, they immediately gritted their teeth and cracked their eyes. "Why did you kill him? Why did you have to be so vicious?" Patriarch Xia's eyes were red as he roared hysterically. "Why?" Fatso muttered to himself. His 5 fingers loosened and the young boy's body chased down. With a thud, it finally fell into the lake, splashing waves. It was also at this moment. Fatso suddenly raised his head, sweeping his gaze across the Xia family and the others, and laughed sinisterly. "This is what you deserve. Today, your Xia family's people will all die." Boom! As the sound of his voice faded, Fatso's body trembled, and the aura of a 2-star war master erupted like a volcano. "So strong! Quickly inform the ancestor." The 9 great clan elders' expressions changed as they shouted at Patriarch Xia. Patriarch Xia's face also turned pale. He hurriedly took out an image crystal and sent a message to Xia Changfeng. Fatso did not stop him. Soon, an illusionary figure appeared. This was an old man. He wore a long black robe and had a head of thick black hair. His dark eyes were like a pair of eagle's eyes that emitted a sharp light. The old man in black looked at Patriarch Xia and asked, "Why are you looking for this old man?" His voice was very calm, but it carried a great sense of majesty. Patriarch Xia said in a panic, "Someone came to my Xia family to cause trouble, and even killed my son and the great clan elder." "What?" The old man in black was shocked and shouted, "Who has the guts to cause trouble in my Xia family?" "Xia Changfeng, it's me." Fatso took a step forward and landed beside Patriarch Xia. His large hand shot out and grabbed Patriarch Xia's neck with lightning speed. Patriarch Xia only had the cultivation of War Emperor, so in front of Fatso, a 2-star War Master, he naturally had no way to resist. At the same time, the old man in black's gaze darkened as he said sinisterly, "Who are you? Why do you want to touch my Xia family's people?" Fatso looked at the shadow and laughed. "If you come over personally, Fat Lord will tell you." The old man in black said in a deep voice, "All right, this city lord will be there right away. If you have the ability, don't run." "Don't worry, I definitely won't." "Not only will Fat Lord not run, he will also kill all the elders of your Xia family in front of you." Fatso laughed. Boom! The black dragon battle chi surged, transforming into a torrent that rushed into the sky. In the blink of an eye, a pitch-black giant hand appeared out of nowhere, emitting an aura that could destroy the world, enveloping the 9 elders of the Xia family. The 9 clan elders immediately panicked. "You dare!" At the same time, Chapter 672. Then open your eyes wide and watch. Does Fat Lord dare or not? Fatso grinned. The pitch-black giant hand above his head was like a towering mountain. It fiercely descended and headed for the 9 elders. "Run!" Xia Changfeng anxiously roared. Immediately, the 9 elders fled in panic like birds startled by the twang of a bow. But at this time, Fatso's body emitted a terrifying pressure. The 9 of them were immediately imprisoned in the void, unable to move at all. They could only watch as the giant hand descended. "Ancestor, save us!" The 9 elders desperately cried for help from Xia Changfeng. "No matter who you are, don't even think about leaving the capital alive today." Xia Changfeng angrily roared, and the figure instantly dissipated. Hearing this, Fatso's eyes flashed coldly. He muttered in a low voice, "Then let's see if you have the ability." Immediately, he did not show any mercy. The giant hand formed by the black dragon battle chi fell with a loud bang. The 9 elders were smashed to pieces in despair. Their blood dyed the sky red. Miserable screams echoed in the air above the Xia family, not dispersing for a long time. The Xia family head, who was captured by Fatso, was scared out of his wits when he saw this scene. What terrifying strength! How come he had never heard of such a terrifying person before? At the lake below, Situ Hai, who was standing behind Lu Xingqian and the Wolf King, clenched his fists as he looked at the fatty who was slaughtering everyone in the sky. His old face was full of excitement. At first he was very worried. But who would have thought that Fatso would kill the 9 elders of the Xia family with just a wave of his hand? He never would have thought that Fatso had already grown to such a level. If this continued, he might really be able to destroy the Xia family today. At the same time, the streets around the Xia family had become a sea of people. Because the commotion was too great, the entire East City was alarmed. Without exception, looking at Fatso, who was standing in the air above the Xia family, everyone's face was full of shock. Outside the Xia family's main gate, it was also packed with people, and it was bustling with noise. That old man had already stood up. He raised his head and looked at Qin Feiyang and the girl who were flying towards him. His blood-stained old face was filled with joy. Whoosh! Qin Feiyang landed in front of the gate with the girl. In an instant, the place quieted down. Grandpa! The young girl immediately threw herself into the old man's arms and sobbed. Child, it's okay now. Don't cry. The old man patted the young girl's shoulder and comforted her while looking gratefully at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang walked in front of the old man and handed him the Qinquan bag. He smiled and said, Old man, take this Qinquan bag and leave. Young man, thank you. However, I absolutely cannot accept this Cosmo sack. The old man hurriedly waved his hands. Qin Feiyang stuffed it into the old man's hands and said with a smile, Take this wealth and live a good life. This won't do. The old man cried out anxiously. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and said, Keep it. You deserve it. The old man hesitated. Suddenly, he took the young girl and knelt on the ground with a plop, saying, Young man, this old man really has no way to repay today's kindness. Please accept a bow from us grandfather and grandson. Don't. Qin Feiyang hurriedly stepped forward and helped the two of them up, saying, It's just a small matter. Don't be so polite. Then, he rubbed the young girl's head and said with a smile, Take good care of Grandpa in the future. I will. The young girl nodded obediently. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and said with a smile, Go! Big brother, I will remember you for the rest of my life, and that fat brother. The young girl smiled shyly, supported the old man, and turned to walk towards the crowd. The crowd in front also automatically retreated and made a path. But Qin Feiyang suddenly noticed that there were some people in the crowd who looked at the Qinquan bag in the old man's hand with a hint of greed in their eyes. Immediately, Qin Feiyang frowned. These people were obviously jealous of this wealth. After all, 2 billion gold coins was not a small amount. Many people could not earn it in several lifetimes. And this grandfather and grandson pair, without the strength to truss a chicken, would probably not be able to escape death in the end. Thinking of this, he said with a smile, Old man, wait. The grandfather and grandson stopped. The old man looked back at Qin Feiyang and asked, Young man, do you have any orders? Qin Feiyang said, I don't know if you trust me. Of course I trust you. The old man nodded. Qin Feiyang said, Well, I'll send you to a place. There, as long as you don't show your wealth, there won't be any trouble. Don't show your wealth. The old man pondered over the sentence and suddenly came to a realization. He looked at the crowd in front of him vigilantly, turned to Qin Feiyang and bowed. Thank you, young man. Qin Feiyang smiled, took out a teleportation door and quickly opened it. The grandfather and grandson pair thanked him again and again before walking into the teleportation door. Seeing the grandfather and grandson pair leave, the people who were tempted by the wealth couldn't help but feel a trace of disappointment. When the teleportation door disappeared, Qin Feiyang soared into the sky, flying towards Fatso and the others. Whoosh! At this time, a black-clothed old man appeared in the air above the lake, full of killing intent. It was Xia Changfeng. As soon as Xia Changfeng appeared, he scanned the surrounding void. Seeing that there were no signs of the 9 elders, he immediately looked towards Fatso and shouted, Where are they? Sorry, you're late. They're already dead. Fatso laughed mischievously. Damn it. Xia Changfeng was furious. Fatso looked Xia Changfeng up and down and said playfully, Xia Changfeng, it's only been 10 years since we last met. How come you become so old? Xia Changfeng frowned. What do you mean? Have we met before? Of course we have. It's just that you've forgotten about Fat Lord. But Fat Lord has never forgotten about you. Fatso's expression changed and a cold light flashed. He twisted his hand, and with a painful scream, the Xia family head's throat was crushed on the spot. Who are you? Why are you so ruthless? Xia Changfeng roared, his eyes bloodshot. Who am I? Fatso lowered his head, as if thinking about the past. Xia Changfeng, do you still remember me? At this time, Situ Hai soared into the sky, standing next to Fatso, hatefully glaring at Xia Changfeng. Xia Changfeng suspiciously looked at Situ Hai and suddenly seemed to remember something. His gaze fiercely trembled, and he angrily said, You're Situ Hai! Haha, you still remember me? I thought you'd also forgotten about me. Situ Hai laughed like a madman. Who is Situ Hai? On the streets around the Xia family, some people suspiciously asked. I think I've heard this name before, but I can't remember. Some people frowned. Another person said, I know this Situ Hai. He's the Situ family's housekeeper. I also remember. 10 years ago, the Situ family was like the sun at noon in our capital. They were the strongest family and no one could compare. But later, the palace master found out that the Situ family's ancestor had rebelled and ordered the extermination of the family. From then on, the Situ family became history and was gradually forgotten by people. But I never thought that the Situ family's housekeeper would still be alive. Now that he's returned, it should be for revenge. But the Situ family's extermination was due to the crime of rebellion. What does it have to do with the Xia family? Everyone was puzzled. In the sky above the lake, Qin Feiyang, Wolf King, and Lu Xingqian were all silently standing behind Fatso, looking at Xia Changfeng. Xia Changfeng was also silently looking at Situ Hai, his expression uncertain. This place fell into a deathly stillness. Only Situ Hai's crazy laughter reverberated between heaven and earth, unable to calm down for a long time. And that laughter was filled with resentment, anger, and unwillingness. Ha! Fatso suddenly shook his head and laughed. It's been 10 years. Fat Lord left his hometown and suffered pain and torture, but you're free and unfettered in the capital, enjoying glory and wealth. Xia Changfeng, don't you feel uneasy? Fatso raised his head to look at Xia Changfeng, his entire body exuding an unresolvable sadness. Xia Changfeng's pupils shrank, and he said in a deep voice, Who are you? Fat Lord, I'm a descendant of the Situ family. Fat Lord's father is the Situ family's patriarch who died tragically at your hands, Situ Hong. Now, you better listen carefully to Fat Lord. Fat Lord's name is Situ Tianyu. Fatso shouted. His gaze was like a sharp blade overbearing. His aura was ostentatious, his long hair and clothes rustling in the wind. At this time he was like a demon god descending to the world, his entire body filled with a bone-chilling coldness. Situ Tianyu? Xia Changfeng frowned. This name was somewhat familiar. Suddenly, a light flashed in his mind. Situ Hong did indeed have such a son, but he remembered that Situ Tianyu's talent was very mediocre, and he would never be able to become a great person. But now, after only a dozen years, how did he become so strong? Fatso smiled. Do you remember now? Xia Changfeng shook his head. No, with your talent, it's impossible to break through to Battle Master so quickly. Who are you? Speak. Xia Changfeng practically roared out those last words. Fatso chuckled. You still remember my mediocre talent. Looks like you haven't had a good time these years. Xia Changfeng's face immediately twisted. He had indeed had a hard time these years, because he knew that the Situ family still had some fish that had escaped the net. He was afraid that the Situ family would come to find him for revenge. Therefore, he had been very careful these past 10 years. At the same time, he had also been tracking down the remaining fish that had escaped the net, and Situ Hai was his main target. But after so many years, there had been no news at all. This was like a thorn that had been stuck in his heart, making him unable to calm down. Fatso suddenly smiled and asked, Xia Changfeng, do you regret it now? Xia Changfeng's 10 fingers tightly clenched together, the killing intent in his eyes undisguised. Why are you looking at Fat Lord? Fat Lord asked you if you regret it, didn't you hear? Fatso couldn't help but roar as he spoke. Killing intent burst out from his eyes. Boom! His index finger pointed in the air, and a black dragon battle chi appeared, roaring like lightning. Accompanied by an earth-shaking explosion, a third of the Xia family's residence was instantly turned to ashes. Chapter 673. Seeing this scene, Xia Changfeng clenched his fists, his face twisted, and his body overflowed with hostility. He didn't care about the guards and servants. Even if they all died, it didn't matter. Because the Xia family was rich and powerful, as long as they made a call, a large number of people would rush into the Xia family, willing to be cattle or horses. But those direct descendants were the future pillars of the Xia family. In order to train them, the Xia family had spent a lot of effort and money, but now, in just an instant, countless people had died. His heart was bleeding. Now, do you know the taste of heartache? Back then, watching you mercilessly slaughter my Sidhu family, Fat Lord's heart was also bleeding. Fat Lord can't remember how many people there were in the Sidhu family at that time. But Fat Lord remembers that blood dyed the earth. Corpses were everywhere, and there were screams of despair. Those sinister faces of yours are just like those demons. They're disgusting and nauseating. Now, Fat Lord will ask you again, do you regret it? Fatso took a deep breath and looked at Xia Changfeng with a faint smile. Xia Changfeng laughed sinisterly. I only regret that I didn't kill you back then. Is that so? Unfortunately, there's no medicine for regret in this world. Fatso shook his head, a cold light flashing in his eyes. Boom! He stretched out his arm and waved it, causing black dragon battle chi to flood downwards. You dare! Xia Changfeng's expression changed, and he hurriedly sent out a palm. Battle chi surged, turning into a torrent that rushed towards the black dragon battle chi. Boom! The two streams of battle chi collided like comets, creating a deafening explosion. Both of them took a step back. Two-star battle ancestor, I didn't think that after so many years, your cultivation would only improve a little. You really disappoint, Fat Lord. Fatso shook his head. Little bastard, don't think that just because your cultivation is the same as mine, you have the qualifications to challenge me. Let me tell you, you're still too inexperienced. Xia Changfeng's hair stood on end, and his battle chi surged. Clang! In an instant, a black war blade appeared out of nowhere. It was several dozen zhang in length as it hovered in the air, emitting an exceptional sharpness. Fatso's pupils shrank as he patted his chest and exclaimed, Is this a battle art? It's so powerful. Fat Lord is so scared. However, there was a hint of mockery in his eyes. What kind of person was Xia Changfeng? Naturally, he could tell that Fatso was toying with him. A trace of ruthlessness immediately appeared on his old face. Little bastard, if you keep hiding, this city lord really won't be able to find you. But you're too stupid. You actually came to me on your own accord. Now, I will send you to the underworld to reunite with your clansmen. He smiled sinisterly and waved his hand. Clang! The black blade trembled in the air, creating a deafening sound. Then, with an astonishing sharpness, it slashed towards Fatso. Fat Lord is stupid? Fatso stared blankly for a moment before he raised his head and laughed. You dare to spout such arrogant words with your meager strength? Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, Fatso activated the dragon transformation art and instantly transformed into a dragon warrior. A terrifying aura spread out in all directions. He took a step forward, causing the void to tremble as he punched the black blade. Clang! The blade disintegrated on the spot. Puff! Xia Changfeng spat out a mouthful of blood as he looked at Fatso in shock. This aura had actually reached the level of a 6-star battle ancestor. Old man, today, Fat Lord will destroy your Xia family and bury you with my Situ family. Fatso roared towards the sky as his dragon claws shot out. Waves of black dragon battle chi blasted into the mansion below like waves of lightning. Rumble. Crack. In just an instant, the entire Xia family was razed to the ground and turned into ruins. Everyone in the Xia family had been reduced to ashes, along with the destruction of the Xia family mansion. It's gone! It's all gone! Xia Changfeng muttered to himself as he looked at the ruins below. He was unable to accept this cruel reality. Little bastard, you should be cut into pieces. Suddenly, Xia Changfeng raised his head to look at Fatso, his old eyes filled with killing intent. Chirp! Immediately after, following a sharp chirp, a huge monster soared into the sky from behind him. It was a falcon with a wingspan of over 100 meters. Its body was completely black and cast a large shadow. It was Xia Changfeng's battle soul. Die, you bastard! Xia Changfeng roared hysterically. The falcon immediately swooped down, its entire body filled with an imposing aura. The pair of eagle eyes was emitting a frightening and ferocious light. Fatso raised his head to look at the falcon, his eyes filled with disdain. Whoosh! He leapt up and stepped on the falcon's head. The falcon let out a mournful cry as it disintegrated. What? Xia Changfeng's eyes widened in anger. His battle soul had been destroyed with a single step. Even if he was strong, he couldn't be this strong. Whoosh! While Xia Changfeng was in a daze, Fatso stepped forward and landed behind him. Then, he whispered in Xia Changfeng's ear, Old man, it seems like you've exhausted all your abilities. That fat lord should send you on your way. Xia Changfeng immediately quivered, his back unable to stop a chill from running. He began to flee without hesitation. Now, he didn't even have the courage to turn around and look at Fatso. His heart was filled with fear. However, just as he took a step forward, a heart-wrenching pain came from his back. Then, he felt a large hand burrowing into his body and grabbing his heart. In that instant, it was as if he had been struck by lightning, his body and mind trembling. He didn't need to think to know that the owner of that hand was Fatso. Don't, child, I was wrong. Please be merciful and spare my life. Xia Changfeng begged, his old face filled with panic. Because if Fatso used even the slightest bit of force, he would die on the spot. Fatso said in bewilderment, Back then, when you slaughtered my family, they also begged for mercy. Why didn't you show mercy? Back then, I did participate in that matter. But the real masterminds were those 2 old bastards from the He and Yuan families. At most, I could only be considered an accomplice. If you want revenge, you should go find them. Xia Changfeng panicked. Fatso frowned. Is that so? It's really like that. I can swear to the heavens. Xia Changfeng nodded, anxiously saying, Then touch your conscience and tell me, did my Situ family rebel back then? While speaking, Fatso gave Qin Feiyang a meaningful glance. Qin Feiyang understood and secretly took out an image crystal, quietly activating it. But Xia Changfeng stammered, unable to say a complete sentence for a long time. Fatso said, As long as you tell the truth now, Fat Lord will spare your life. Really? Xia Changfeng was delighted. Fat Lord always keeps his word. Besides, you don't have a choice now. Fatso sneered. Okay, I'll tell you everything. Back then, your Situ family didn't rebel. I clearly remember that it was those 2 old bastards from the He and Yuan families who saw that your Situ family was getting stronger and stronger, so they had evil intentions and framed your Situ family. They were also the ones who instigated the mansion master to destroy your Situ family. Xia Changfeng, who had fallen into panic, finally spat out the truth and cleared the Situ family's name. Qin Feiyang also waved his hand, and a white stream of light flew out of the image crystal and swept into the sky. Soon, A huge image unfolded in the sky above the East City. It was the scene recorded earlier, including the conversation between Xia Changfeng and Fatso. At this moment, the entire East City fell into a deathly silence. Everyone raised their heads and looked at the image in the sky. After a while, the image ended. The East City immediately boiled over. So it turns out that the Sidhu family was framed back then. The Yuanhe and Xia families are really despicable. They frame the loyal and spread rumors to mislead the public. They must pay with their blood, that's right. Although this matter happened more than 10 years ago, we can't let the loyal and the people of the Sidhu family die with grievances. The people were filled with righteous indignation. They had never seen such a despicable and shameless person. The Sidhu family could become stronger and stronger because they were capable. What was the meaning of slandering them and framing them behind their backs? Even if they were jealous, they couldn't be so despicable. At the same time, Fatso also closed his eyes, and 2 drops of tears rolled down his cheeks. These were tears of joy. Situ Hai was also muttering to himself, and tears were also streaming down his face. My Situ family has been wronged for more than 10 years, and today we finally cleared our name. Patriarch, patriarch, elders, clansmen, you can rest in peace in the netherworld. Hearing these words, Qin Feiyang, Lu Xingqian, and Wolf King couldn't help but sigh. The greatest pain in life was being wronged. Although the Sidhu family had been exterminated more than 10 years ago, they still carried the crime of betrayal. One could imagine how many people had cursed them behind their backs all these years. Now that the truth was out, as the only descendant and steward of the Sidhu family, how could they not be happy and excited? However, Xia Changfeng was extremely anxious at this moment. This was because Fatso still hadn't let go of him. Seeing that Fatso didn't speak for a long time, Xia Changfeng finally couldn't help but take the initiative to ask, Tianyu, can you let me go now? Swish! Fatso opened his eyes, and 2 rays of cold light shot out. Then, he clenched his 5 fingers and squeezed Xia Changfeng's heart without hesitation. Ah! Xia Changfeng immediately let out a painful howl that resounded through the sky. Back then, you slaughtered so many of my Sidhu family's people, and now you still want to live. Is that even possible? Fatso sneered and pulled back his hand. Xia Changfeng was powerless to chase after him. Little bastard, don't be so proud. Soon, you'll come down to accompany me. He bitterly looked at Fatso. His face twisted as he hysterically screamed. Finally, with a bang, Xia Changfeng fell into the ruins and died on the spot. The people who will accompany you will not be me, but the Yuan family and the He family. Fatso muttered. He glanced at Xia Changfeng's corpse, then looked at Sidhu Hai and said, Uncle Hai, go to the Yuan family. Sidhu Hai nodded heavily and immediately opened a teleportation gate. Their expressions changed. The Yuan clan was in the South City. Could it be that the sound just now came from the Yuan clan? Let's go and take a look, the burly man shouted. One of the commanders immediately opened a portal. I didn't think that the Sidhu clan still had such a monster alive. Yeah, Xia Changfeng didn't even have the strength to fight back in front of him. His strength is truly terrifying. I'm afraid that the continent city is going to change today. The people below began to discuss again. The Sidhu clan, hearing these discussions, the eyes of the 10 commanders trembled. The burly man reached out with his hand, and a supreme force appeared. A middle-aged man on the street below instantly flew up uncontrollably and landed in front of the burly man. The burly man immediately asked, Is the Sidhu clan you're talking about the one that was exterminated more than 10 years ago? It's the Sidhu clan. The middle-aged man nodded in panic. The Sidhu clan still has someone alive. The burly man's expression froze. The other 9 people also looked at each other. Suddenly, One of the white-haired old men shuddered and said in surprise, "I remember now. That black-clothed old man was the steward of the Situ clan, Situ Hai." Another commander said, "I also remember. That's right, it's him. It seems that they've come for revenge." The burly man's gaze sank as he looked at the middle-aged man in front of him and asked, "Who is the monster from the Situ clan you were talking about?" The middle-aged man said, "It's that fatso. He's called Situ Tianyu. He looks to be around 20 years old, but he's even stronger than Xia Changfeng." "What? Stronger than Xia Changfeng in his 20s?" The hearts of the 10 commanders shook. The middle-aged woman looked at the burly man and said, "We must hurry and capture them. Otherwise, the continent city will really change. Let's go." The burly man waved his hand and led the 9 people into the teleportation gate. The middle-aged man saw this and hurriedly called out, "Commander, wait!" He wanted to tell the 10 commanders that the Situ clan had been wronged, but it was too late. The 10 of them had already entered the teleportation gate and disappeared. Back to Qin Feiyang and the others. As soon as Fatso arrived above the Yuan clan, he waved his hand. Black Dragon Battle, Qi roared out and bombarded the Yuan clan. In that instant, the originally glorious and imposing Yuan clan turned into ruins. The people of the Yuan clan were also annihilated along with the destruction of the Yuan clan mansion. But they did not see the Yuan clan's ancestor appear for a long time. Fatso scanned the ruins and frowned. "Uncle Hai, how strong is old dog Yuan now?" Situ Hai said, "As far as I know, he is also a 2-star war master." "So weak?" Fatso was slightly startled, then sneered, "Then let's go to the He clan." Situ Hai frowned. "Uncle Hai, you don't know. In my current dragon warrior form, with a casual wave of my hand, I can unleash the strength of a 6-star war master. A mere 2-star war master. I'm afraid he would have already been smashed to pieces." Fatso said disdainfully, "So strong." Situ Hai's gaze trembled. He thought for a moment, then shook his head and said, "Tianyu, we still can't be careless. What if he's lucky enough to not die? Or maybe he's not at home right now and is outside. If he's outside, then there's nothing I can do now. I can only wait until later to slowly find him." After Fatso finished speaking, he waved his hand, and a black dragon battle Qi shot into the ruins below like lightning. Boom! Following a loud sound. Even the ruins of the Yuan clan were gone, turning into a huge sinkhole. Next, Fatso looked at Situ Hai and said, "The 10 great commanders should be here. Let's go." Upon hearing the 10 great commanders, Situ Hai did not dare to stay any longer. He immediately opened the teleportation gate and the group entered in a single file. Just as the few of them left, the 10 great commanders appeared behind them. Looking at the Yuan clan being destroyed in one day, the 10 people's faces were ashen. The tall and sturdy man shouted angrily, "Find them immediately! We must find them!" "Where are we going to find them?" The other 9 people had helpless looks on their faces. The continent was so big, if these people wanted to hide, it would be impossible to find them in a short period of time. Suddenly, the middle-aged woman said, "I remember that back then, other than the Yuan clan and the Xia clan, the He clan also participated in the destruction of the Situ clan. Do you think they went to the He clan?" "Yes, it's the He clan." The tall and sturdy man quivered and roared, "Quick! Quick! Let's go to the He clan in North City." The middle-aged woman waved her hand and opened a teleportation gate. Whoosh! The 10 of them immediately turned into streams of light and rushed into the teleportation gate. In the blink of an eye, they appeared in the sky above the He clan and immediately saw Qin Feiyang and the others standing in the void not far away. Fatso, on the other hand, was currently raising his arm and pointing his index finger at the He clan below, battle Qi surging at his fingertips. At the same time, his eyes were filled with a strong cold light. Seeing Fatso's posture, the tall and sturdy man's expression changed abruptly, and he roared, "Stop!" Fatso raised his head and looked at the tall and sturdy man. He grinned and said, "Sorry you're late." Before his voice died away, the black dragon battle chi, surging at his fingertips, suddenly shot out, carrying an aura of destruction as it blasted into the mansion below. Boom! A deafening loud noise suddenly resounded in this place. The He clan's mansion also occupied a very large area, and the magnificent hall showed its magnificence and extraordinariness. But in just an instant, all of this was gone. The patriarch of the He clan, the 10 elders, countless disciples, including those servants and guards, all died before they could figure out what was going on. The 10 commanders were dumbfounded. The He clan was destroyed just like that? Whoosh! The next moment, the 10 of them looked at Fatso, their eyes flashing fiercely. However, Fatty didn't pay any attention to them. His eyes were fixed on the ruins below. He was looking for the He clan's patriarch. Who did it? All of a sudden, an angry roar exploded in the ruins below. Then, a red-haired old man with disheveled hair and a dirty face soared into the sky, his entire body covered in blood. But when he saw the 10 commanders, the red-haired old man couldn't help but be stunned. "Old dog, he long time no see." At this time, Fatso sneered. The red-haired old man raised his eyebrows and turned to look at Fatso. He frowned and said, "Who are you?" Fatso said with a smile, "You've seen me when I was young." Seen? The red-haired old man looked up and down at Fatso for a moment and said angrily, "Who the hell are you? Did you do all of this?" "Yes, it was Fat Lord who did it." "As for who Fat Lord is..." Fatso's eyes turned cold. "Listen carefully. Fat Lord is Situhong's son, Situ Tianyu." "What?" "Situhong." The red-haired old man's eyes trembled. "Do you remember now? Fat Lord has already destroyed the Yuan and Xia clans, and I killed Xia Changfeng. Now it's your turn." Fatso said, "You killed Xia Changfeng?" The red-haired old man was surprised. Fatso licked his lips and said with a smile, "Yes, he died very miserably. Fat Lord, personally, crushed his heart. Tell me, how do you want to die?" "Situ Tianyu, don't go too far. Back then it was because your Situ clan rebelled that they were exterminated," the burly man shouted angrily. "Shut up." Fatso shouted coldly and suddenly looked at the burly man. His eyes were incomparably crazy. "What do you know? What qualifications do you have to talk nonsense here?" The burly man frowned. Whoosh! Chapter 675. The burly man frowned and looked at the patriarch of the He clan. The patriarch of the He clan felt a little guilty. He pretended to be calm and looked at Fatso. "Everyone in Yunzhou knows about the Situ clan's rebellion." "What do you mean by that?" "Old dog, you're still lying." Before Fatso could say anything, Situ Hai roared. "I didn't do anything wrong. What's there to lie about? But you killed everyone in the He clan. How are you going to settle the score?" The He clan's patriarch stared at them with a cold glint in his eyes. Situ Hai was so angry that smoke was coming out of his head. He framed the Situ clan and made them suffer for more than 10 years. Now he was playing the blame game. He was so shameless. "What about me?" "Let me tell you, if you don't give me a satisfactory explanation, don't even think about leaving." The patriarch of the He clan sneered. "Old dog, I'll kill you." Situ Hai roared. He had completely lost his mind and lunged at the patriarch of the He clan. Fatso frowned. He grabbed Situ Hai's arm and shouted, "Uncle Hai, calm down." Situ Hai roared. He still won't admit it. "How can I calm down?" Fatso smiled. "Have you forgotten? We have evidence now. He has to admit it even if he doesn't want to." "That's right. We have evidence." Situ Hai shuddered. He turned to Qin Feiyong and said, "Little brother, please show us the evidence." "We have evidence." The patriarch of the He clan narrowed his eyes and looked at Qin Feiyong. Qin Feiyong smiled faintly. He took out the image crystal and waved his hand. The recorded image appeared in the sky again. The patriarch of the He clan's face turned pale when he saw the image. The crowd gathered on the street below also roared with righteous indignation. Hidakai, how are you? Not only did you lie to all of us, but you also lied to the mansion master. How should you be punished? As soon as the image ended, the 10 great commanders looked at the patriarch of the He clan. No, I didn't do it. Xia Chongfeng is slandering me. The He clan's ancestor hurriedly shook his head. He looked at the burly man and said, Brother Amo, you must believe me. I am innocent. The burly man shouted, The evidence is conclusive, and you're still quibbling. You're really stubborn. Take him down. The other 9 commanders nodded and immediately surrounded the He clan's patriarch. Seeing this, the old ancestor of the He family panicked. Suddenly, he turned to look at Fatso and roared, Little bastard, even if I die, I'll drag you down with me. Boom! His aura erupted as he charged towards Fatso without looking back. His eyes were brimming with killing intent. 3 Star Wars sect? Fatso was startled for a moment before he disdainfully said, You're a bit stronger than that trash Xia Chongfeng. But if you want to drag Fat Lord down with you, you're still lacking. He took a step forward, advancing instead of retreating. Die. When the 2 of them met, they roared at the same time and punched each other with all their might. Boom! Ah! The 2 fists fiercely collided. Xia Chongfeng screamed miserably and was sent flying on the spot. Following closely, his body exploded in the air and blood dyed the sky red. So strong! The pupils of the 10 commanders shrank. A mere 2 Star Wars sect had actually killed a 3 Star Wars sect in an instant. This was too crazy. However, they did not know that Fatso, in his dragon warrior state, could unleash the strength of a 6 Star Wars sect with just a raise of his hand. Although the He family's ancestor was a 3 Star Wars sect, because he was too impatient earlier, he did not use any battle arts. With just his flesh and blood, how could he be a match for Fatso? However, after killing the He family's ancestor, Fatso's killing intent did not dissipate, because he still had his greatest enemy. That was the Cloud State Palace Chief. However, he also knew that with his current strength, he was still not a match for the Cloud State Palace Chief. Who? Taking a deep breath, he turned around and landed beside Qin Feiyong, smiling. Boss, we can go now. Qin Feiyong nodded. You are not allowed to leave. However, at this moment, the tall and sturdy man waved his hand, and the 9 commanders immediately surrounded Qin Feiyong and the others. Why? Qin Feiyong raised his eyebrows. Although the He family, Yuan family, and Xia family framed the Situ family in the early years, you have violated the rules of the state capital by killing so many people in the state capital. You must wait for the palace chief to return and personally decide. Please rest assured that the palace chief will handle this impartially, the tall and sturdy man said. Ha! That old which will handle this impartially? Are you joking? The fatty laughed out loud. His laughter was full of sarcasm. The tall and sturdy man's face darkened as he shouted, Don't be rude to the palace chief! Humph! Calling her an old witch, Fat Lord has already shown mercy. If you really want to say it, she's not even as good as an idiot. She's simply an idiot. Fatso coldly snorted. His words were merciless. Killing intent flashed in the tall and sturdy man's eyes as he waved his hand and said, Take him down! Boom! The aura of the 9 great commanders exploded. At this moment, Lu Xingqian's mind moved, and the group instantly disappeared without a trace. Where did he go? The 9 great commanders were shocked and hurriedly scanned the void around them. The tall and sturdy man was also bewildered. How could they disappear into thin air? No, he seemed to have heard of such a situation before. It's him. All of a sudden, the tall and sturdy man exclaimed as a strong cold light burst out from his eyes. Who? The other 9 great commanders looked at him in shock. Qin Feiyong, the tall and sturdy man, said word by word. Yes, it's him. No wonder I found him familiar. I didn't expect him to be so bold as to come to Yun State to cause trouble. The 9 commanders also came to a sudden realization. According to the palace chief, Qin Feiyong's hiding treasure can't be moved. It must still be here. Watch carefully, I'll inform the palace chief immediately. As the tall and sturdy man spoke, he took out an image crystal and infused his battle chi into it. After a while, the illusory figure of the Yun State Mansion master appeared. The palace chief looked at the tall and sturdy man and frowned. What are you doing? The tall and sturdy man said, My lord, Qin Feiyong and the others came to Yun State and destroyed the He, Xia, and Yuan families. What? The palace chief was enraged and shouted, Why didn't you stop them? My lord, it's not that I didn't stop them, but they were too fast. We couldn't stop them in time. The tall and sturdy man smiled bitterly. Trash! The palace chief scolded and shouted, Where are they now? The tall and sturdy man said, They're hiding in that hiding treasure now. The palace chief was overjoyed and nodded. Very good. You guys stay there and guard. I'll go back immediately. Yes. The tall and sturdy man responded respectfully and turned off the image crystal. His eyes were filled with killing intent. In a secret chamber, Qin Feiyong and the others stood side by side and looked at the image in front of them. This was Lu Xingqin's space divine item. They had not left, so they saw the message between the tall and sturdy man and the palace chief clearly. Lu Xingqin stared at the tall and sturdy man in the image and frowned. Brother Qin, why do I feel that there's something wrong with this man? I have the same feeling too. Qin Feiyong nodded thoughtfully. He turned to Sidu Hai and asked, Who is he? Sidu Hai said, His name is Mo Jun, the father of the Mo family's patriarch. The Mo family? Qin Feiyong frowned and said, Is there someone called Mo Wushan in the Mo family? Yes. Mo Jun is Mo Wushan's grandfather. Situ Hai said, No wonder. Qin Feiyong suddenly came to a realization, and the corners of his mouth pursed into a sneer. Wolf King said, Little Qin Zi, I caught a trace of murderous intent in his eyes just now. It might be directed at us. It's not a possibility, it's a fact, because Mo Wushan died in our hands. Once he has the chance, he will definitely come after us. Qin Feiyong smiled faintly. That's not right. We just came back from the 9 underworlds. Mo Wushan and the others all died in there. Mo Jun couldn't have received the news so quickly, Fatso said suspiciously. Don't forget, Wan Qiao and Feng Wuxia are still alive. And Tan Wu, when he returns to He province, he will definitely tell us the truth. Apart from Feng province and Yu province, the people from the other provinces basically died in our hands. Think about it. When the palace chiefs of He province, Kong province, and Serene province learn about this from Tan Wu and the others, won't they hate us? So, they will definitely tell these things to the palace chiefs of the other provinces as soon as possible. That's why the palace chiefs of the 9 provinces came to our spiritual state one after another. Lu Xingqin smiled faintly. That makes sense. Fatso nodded. But what puzzles me is, why did the palace chiefs of Feng province and Yu province come to our spiritual state? To join in the fun? Lu Xingqin frowned. Qin Feiyong smiled and said, When we go back and see the old master, we'll know when we ask him. Okay. Lu Xingqin nodded and looked at Qin Feiyong asking, What about now? Do we go back or continue to observe? Qin Feiyong said, Let's wait a little longer. I want to know how they plan to deal with us. Spiritual state. At the Palace Master's mansion. At this moment, the Yunzhou Palace Master was standing in the conference hall, raging at the old master. Old man Rin, you heard it all. This is the young man of your spiritual state. He's simply lawless. She was about to explode in anger. After learning about the death of Mo Wuxian and the others, she was already furious. She thought to herself that this time she must make Qin Feiyang pay the price. But she never expected that as soon as she came to the spiritual state, this Qin Feiyang would actually go and raid her nest. This was too much. Then he looked at the old man. His head was lowered and his brows were tightly knitted together. He did not say a single word. Previously, when Mo Jun sent a message to the Yunzhou Palace Master, the Yunzhou Palace Master didn't avoid it, so he heard it all. Not only did he hear it, but the other palace masters in the conference hall also heard it and were all in disbelief, because they all knew that the Xiao family, the He family, and the Yuan family were super families in Yunzhou. Moreover, the ancestors of the three families were highly valued by the Yunzhou Palace Master, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they were his right-hand men. But this Qin Feiyang actually destroyed the three great clans in an instant. Wasn't this clearly going against the Cloud State's mansion master? Chapter 676. Seeing that the old man was silent, the Yunzhou mansion master quickly lost his patience and shouted, "Say something! Don't think that silence will solve this!" The old man looked up at her and then lowered his head in silence again. To be honest, he was very angry now. He even wanted to call Qin Feiyang over and give Qin Feiyang a few slaps. Wasn't this causing trouble for him? Couldn't they just stop? Old man Rin, this is not a small matter. You can't cover up for Qin Feiyang anymore. Yes, if you don't deal with it impartially today, we will report it to the emperor and ask him to make a decision. The two white-haired old men said one after another. One of them was the Kunze Mansion Master, and the other was the Changzhou Mansion Master. Their purpose of coming to the spiritual state was naturally to settle the score with Qin Feiyang, because the blonde and green-haired young men were forced to jump into the sea of misery by Qin Feiyang. The old man raised his eyebrows and suddenly stood up. He looked at the Cloud State's manor head and said, "This old man will go with you to Cloud State to investigate this matter thoroughly. If Qin Feiyang really killed the innocent, this old man will definitely not protect him." "I was waiting for you to say that." The Yunzhou Mansion Master sneered, opened a portal, and stepped aside. He looked at the old man and said, "Please." The old man snorted and strode into the portal. The Yunzhou Mansion Master looked at the others and smiled. "Everyone, why don't you come to Yunzhou for a visit?" "That's what I was thinking." The Kunze Mansion Master nodded and smiled. Then, the group of giants stepped into the portal one after another. Yunzhou above the He family. Seeing the old man appear, Qin Feiyang and the others looked at each other. Why did the old man come in person? The old man glanced at the ruins below and shouted, "Qin Feiyang, come out!" "What should we do?" Fatso was a little flustered. Wolf King rolled his eyes at him and said, "We have evidence in our hands. What are you afraid of?" Fatso said in realization, "Yes, what am I afraid of?" At the same time, the Yun State Mansion Master and the others appeared one after another. Seeing the He clan in ruins, they couldn't help but frown. The Yunzhou Manor Lord looked around and shouted, "Qin Feiyang, I know you're still here. Stop hiding and come out." "Who said I was going to hide?" Before he could finish his words, Qin Feiyang's faint laughter rang out. Next, Qin Feiyang and the others appeared in front of the old man out of thin air. "Lu Xingqian is here too?" The old man frowned and looked at Qin Feiyang angrily. "Tell me what's going on." Qin Feiyang shrugged and said, "I didn't do it. It was Fatso." The old man then looked at Fatso. Fatso said, "I'm here for revenge." "Revenge?" The old master frowned. Fatso had told him about this before, so he also knew that the Situ clan was wronged, but there was no evidence. However, those despicable villains are still alive today. Whose fault is this? The other manor lords all looked at the Yunzhou manor lord. The Yunzhou manor lord's old face was livid and red. He wished he could find a hole to hide in. At the same time, he looked at Mo June angrily. Can you blame me for this? You didn't want me to say it. Mo June was helpless. Fatso sneered. Old witch, do you feel guilty now? Is it wrong for Fat Lord to seek revenge? The Yunzhou manor lord was silent. What else could she say? She had already lost face. The old man said, I think this matter should be reported to the emperor. Let him see how foolish the Yunzhou manor lord is. The other manor lords were shocked. This matter was not a big deal, but it was not a small one either. If they did not make a fuss about it, the emperor would not care. However, if they did, the consequences would be severe. The Yunzhou manor lord alone would definitely be removed from his position and investigated. He might even be executed on the spot. In other words, this old mandarin was determined to get rid of the Yunzhou manor lord. The Yunzhou manor lord was also shocked. He stared at the old man in shock and anger. Did I say something wrong? Even the emperor is punished the same as the commoners when he breaks the law, let alone us manor lords. The old man said lightly. The Yunzhou manor lord's eyes turned cold. He shouted, Old man, don't go too far. Am I? I'm just stating a fact. The old man sneered. Old man Rin, we're all old friends. Why do you have to be so ruthless? Yes, let's forgive and forget. I think we should just let this matter go. If there's no other way, let her compensate the Situ family. The other manor lords tried to persuade the old man. The old man frowned and turned to look at Fatso. He asked, What do you think? Fatso shook his head and said, I don't want any compensation. I don't want this old witch to kowtow and apologize in front of the graves of my family members, because she doesn't deserve it. I just want her to announce to the world that the Situ family is innocent. That's reasonable. Everyone nodded and looked at the Yunzhou manor lord. The Yunzhou manor lord lowered his head and his expression was uncertain. It was easy to announce to the world. She just needed to give the order. However, once she announced to the world, the entire Yunzhou manor would know that she had done something stupid. By then, many people would curse her behind her back. In short, once this matter was announced to the world, she would lose her dignity and reputation. The old man said meaningfully, Is your life more important or your reputation more important? You have to think carefully. The Yunzhou manor lord's eyes trembled. He gritted his teeth and said, Okay, I'll announce to the world later. Now, Fatso said without any room for discussion. Okay. The Yunzhou manor lord looked coldly at Fatso and shouted, Mo June, go and do it immediately. It was obvious that the Yunzhou manor lord was on the verge of exploding. Yes, the 10 commanders responded respectfully and immediately turned to leave. After the 10 commanders left, the Kunza manor lord said, Now that the Situ family's matter is settled, let's talk about the 9th level of hell. Senior, I'm confused. In the 9th level of hell, everyone relies on their own abilities. What else is there to talk about? Qin Feiyang looked at the Kunza manor lord in confusion. Yes, it does depend on one's own abilities. But the people of Kunzu have already reached the other side. Why do you still force them to jump into the sea of bitterness? The Kunzu manor lord shouted. And my Changzhou. The Changzhou manor lord's face was as dark as water. Qin Feiyang thought for a while and asked, Seniors, are you talking about the golden-haired and green-haired people? Golden-haired? Green-haired? Don't they have names? Are you that ill-mannered? The Kunza manor lord was furious. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed coldly as he smiled and said, "I'm sorry. My father died early and didn't teach me anything about manners. Besides, I really don't know their names, and I'm not interested in knowing." The two immediately clenched their fists, and their eyes were frighteningly gloomy. "If you ask me, you're just jealous of the victory of the spiritual state. That's right. Those two good-for-nothings and Mo Wuxian were killed by us. But do you know what they did to us?" Qin Feiyang sneered. The other manor lords were silent. "You don't know? Let me tell you. At that time, Mo Wuxian and those two good-for-nothings reached the other side before us. Guess what? They immediately attacked and killed us. You have to know that we were still in the sea of bitterness, and except for me, everyone else was confused by the illusion. May I ask everyone, is this method of theirs vicious or not? If it weren't for our brilliant methods, we would have been buried in the sea of bitterness. I'm just like that. If you don't provoke me, I don't want to provoke you either. But if anyone provokes me, even if they're God, I won't let them off easily." Chapter 677. The hearts of the authorities present shuddered. Whether it was courage or courage, this man was far beyond his peers. If he didn't die prematurely, he would definitely become a great figure in the future. "No, you're lying." Suddenly, the Yuzhou prefecture governor said, "Behave atrociously?" Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and turned to look at the Yuzhou prefecture governor. "Senior, what do you mean?" The Yuzhou prefecture governor said, "Wan Qiu told me in person that you were jealous of Mo Wuxian and the others who reached the Nirvana realm first. So you killed them." Qin Feiyang was stunned and asked, "Are you sure it was Wan Qiu who said it?" "Of course. Don't tell me that I'm going to start a rumor and create trouble." The Yuzhou prefecture governor said angrily. Qin Feiyang immediately looked at Lu Xingqian with a cold light in his eyes. If it weren't for Lu Xingqian who interceded for Wan Qiu would have been dead. How could he have the chance to sow discord? Lu Xingqian also frowned and looked quite angry. Seeing that Qin Feiyang didn't say anything, the Yuzhou prefecture governor sneered. "Are you speechless because your lie has been exposed? What a joke! Although I, Qin Feiyang, am not a good person, I have always been upright. Whereas this Wan Qiu is narrow-minded and two-faced. You actually still believe his nonsense. Truly laughable to the extreme." Qin Feiyang was so angry that he laughed. "What did you say?" The Yuzhou prefecture governor's eyes darkened. "What? Did I touch your sore spot?" "It seems that the people of Yuzhou are really like Wan Qiu, including you." Qin Feiyang sneered. "How dare you?" The Yuzhou prefecture governor was furious. He roared and pounced on Qin Feiyang. But at this time, the Fengzhou prefecture lord stepped forward and stood in front of Qin Feiyang, blocking the pressure of the Yuzhou prefecture lord. "What are you doing?" The tranquil state prefecture master asked angrily. "My apologies. Unlike you, I didn't come here to make trouble for Qin Feiyang." Feng State's chief said with a smile. "Then what are you doing here?" The governor of Yuzhou province frowned. The governor of Yun State and the others looked at the governor of Feng State in confusion. "Me." The governor of Feng State narrowed his eyes and said, "I'm here to settle accounts with Yunzhou, Kunzu, and Changzhou." "What do you mean?" The chiefs of Yun State, Kun State, and Chang State could not help but frown. "And me." At this moment, the Yu State prefecture lord also stood out and looked at the Yun State prefecture lord and the other two with hostility. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "There are still good people in this world." Lu Xingqian said, "That's right. Compared to some shameless old fogies, these two seniors are more worthy of respect. Stop flattering me. We won't fall for your tricks." Hearing their words, the Feng State prefecture lord and the Yu State prefecture lord could not help but roll their eyes. Then, the Feng State Prefecture Lord looked at the three of them and said in a deep voice, "As far as I know, the truth is as Qin Feiyang said. Wan Qiu is lying." The Tranquil State Prefecture Lord said angrily, "Don't make irresponsible remarks." "I'm making irresponsible remarks? Let me tell you, when Wan Qiu and the other two killed Qin Feiyang, Zhao Yu and Luo Dan from Feng State were also there. And if it weren't for Qin Feiyang's help, they would have been buried in the sea of bitterness. You must give me an explanation for this matter today." The Feng State Prefecture Lord shouted. The Yu State Prefecture Lord said, "Ling Yu and Feng Ran from Yu State were also there." Everyone looked at the Tranquil State Prefecture Lord. "Was Wan Qiu really lying?" The old master said, "In my opinion, why don't we call Wan Qiu here and confront him face to face?" Qin Feiyang said lightly, "We should have called that trash here long ago. Then we wouldn't have to waste so much time." But before his voice died away, the Crane State Prefecture Lord said, "There's no need to confront him. I can prove that Wan Qiu is lying." Everyone looked at the Crane State Prefecture Lord again. The Crane State Prefecture Lord said, "What Tan Wu of Crane State reported to me is exactly the same as what Qin Feiyang said." The Tranquil State Prefecture Lord said angrily, "Then why didn't you say so earlier?" "I didn't want to say. That's because our He Province's people were all killed by Qin Feiyang and them. But there was no other way. Before I left, Tan Wu begged me again and again, telling me to distinguish between public and private affairs." The Crane State Prefecture Lord sighed. He really couldn't figure out what Qin Feiyang did to make Tan Wu defend him like this. Distinguish between public and private affairs. Hearing the Crane State Prefecture Lord's words, the Kong State Prefecture Lord couldn't help but feel ashamed. "Fine. I'll also distinguish between public and private affairs for once. What Feng Wuxie and Xue Ning told me when they came back is the same as what Qin Feiyang said." The Kong State Prefecture Lord said. Obviously, he didn't want to tell the truth. "Damn bastard, how dare you lie to me? See how I'll deal with you when I get back." The Tranquil State Prefecture Lord was furious. "Now do you see Wan Qiu's character clearly? Of course, I also understand that I can't blame you for this matter. Because it's not that you're too stupid, it's because Wan Qiu is too cunning." Qin Feiyang chuckled. Hearing Qin Feiyang's words, the Tranquil State Prefecture Lord's face eased a lot. There was even a hint of a smile. He thought that although this kid was arrogant, he still respected him and knew to give him a way out. But when he heard the last sentence, his old face suddenly turned green and red. This was a disguised insult to him. This little bastard was simply going too far. But now he was in the wrong. What could he do? If the old man wasn't here, he could still teach Qin Feiyang a lesson. But now the old man was watching from the side and wouldn't give him the chance. He looked at Qin Feiyang gloomily and said coldly, "I hope you can always be so lucky." How could Qin Feiyang not hear such sarcasm? But he didn't take it to heart at all. He cupped his hands and said with a smile, "Thank you for your kind words, Senior." Humph! The Tranquil State Prefecture Lord snorted coldly, opened a portal, and walked in without looking back. He didn't have the face to continue staying in this place. After that, the Prefecture Lords of Kuan Prefecture and Changzhou also opened the portal reluctantly and left one after another. But the Prefecture Lords of He Prefecture, Kong Prefecture, Feng Prefecture, and Yu Prefecture didn't leave. Qin Feiyang looked at the Prefecture Lords of He Prefecture and Kong Prefecture and cupped his hands. "First of all, I would like to thank the two seniors for helping me out. Secondly, I'll say the same thing. In the netherworld, everyone relies on their own means. If it's just because of this matter, then I'll give you a piece of advice. In the future, you'd better not participate in the battle of the 9 prefectures. Because at that time, there will still be people who will die. The implication was that one should be able to afford to lose. If one couldn't afford to lose, then don't gamble. If one couldn't afford to lose, then one had to gamble. This was their own problem. Hearing this, the prefecture, lords of He Prefecture and Kong Prefecture, looked at each other and sighed at the same time. As the masters of a prefecture, how could they not understand these principles? But in their hearts they were unwilling. In the end, the two didn't say anything more. They opened the portal, turned around, and left silently. The prefecture lord of Feng Prefecture said with a smile, "Little brother, we're leaving too. When you enter the imperial capital, you must get along well with Zhao Yu and the others." The prefecture lord of Yu Prefecture also smiled. Qin Feiyang nodded and cupped his hands. "Seniors, take care." The two smiled, opened a portal each, and left quickly. In this way, only the old man, Qin Feiyang, and the prefecture lord of Yun Prefecture were left here. The old man glanced at the prefecture lord of Yun Prefecture, opened a portal, and said with a smile, "Let's go too." Wait. But at this moment, the prefecture lord of Yun Prefecture hurriedly shouted, "Is there anything else?" The old man glanced at her indifferently. The prefecture lord of Yun Prefecture ignored the old man and looked directly at Fatso. "Although I killed your clansman by mistake, you are still a person of Yun Prefecture. Now that the misunderstanding has been resolved, isn't it time for you to return to your roots?" Return to my roots. Fatso was slightly stunned and looked at the prefecture lord of Yun Prefecture strangely. At the same time, the old man raised his eyebrows and said angrily, "Old man, this is your fault." The prefecture lord of Yun Prefecture said angrily, "Is it wrong for me to let him return to his roots?" "It's not wrong to let him return to his roots, but your fault is that you have bad intentions. If he didn't pass the 9 states tournament, if he didn't have the achievements he has today, would you have let him stay in Yun Prefecture? Obviously not." The old man sneered. The prefecture lord of Yun Prefecture remained silent. "Let me tell you, although Fatso was born in Yun Prefecture, he has always lived in the spiritual state. Besides, he is an inner palace disciple of the spiritual state, and it was the spiritual state that trained him. Now you want to sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor? No way. Feiyang, let's go." The old man waved his hand and walked into the portal first. Lu Xingqian and Qin Feiyang also walked in. But Fatso looked at the city below with a complicated expression. Situ Hai glanced at Fatso and said with a smile, "Tianyu, I won't force you to make any decision. Just do what you think." In fact, Situ Hai really wanted Fatso to return to his roots, because if Fatso chose to stay in Yun Prefecture, the Situ family would definitely rise again. It might even surpass the glory of more than a decade ago. But he also knew that Fatso's heart was no longer in Yun Prefecture. "Uncle Hai, thank you." Fatso looked at Situ Hai gratefully. He clenched his hands tightly and said with determination, "I swear that in the future there will be a place for the Situ family in the imperial capital." With that, Fatso turned around and stepped into the portal. The imperial capital. Situ Hai's eyes trembled, and he couldn't calm down for a long time. It turned out that this child's goal was the imperial capital, but it made sense. With this child's talent and ability, Yun Prefecture could no longer accommodate him. "Good luck, child." He looked up in the direction of the spiritual state and murmured to himself with a gratified smile on his old face. At the same time, seeing Fatso leave without any hesitation, the Yunzhou mansion master couldn't help but feel angry, but she didn't say anything. She looked at Situ Hai and said with a smile, "You can stay in the city from now on. I'll arrange a place for you to rebuild the Situ family." She couldn't stop Fatso from leaving. Therefore, she could only settle for the next best thing, which was Situ Hai. As long as Situ Hai stayed in the city, it was equivalent to tying Fatso and Yun Prefecture together. But Situ Hai was not tempted by the Yunzhou Mansion Master's temptation. No need. I'm old and don't have the energy. As long as you don't disturb my peaceful life. With that, Situ Hai opened a portal. Seeing this, the Yunzhou Mansion Master was furious and sneered. Do you really think that the Situ family can have place in the imperial capital? Don't be naive. I believe in Tianyu, Situ Hai said with a smile. Then he walked into the portal without looking back. Looking at the portal that disappeared, the Yunzhou Mansion Master clenched his fists and shouted, "Emo June, come here immediately!" She was already humble enough, but she was still rejected. This was infuriating. Whoosh! Soon, Emo June flew over and bowed. "My lord, what are your orders?" The Yunzhou Mansion Master said, "Go and look for him immediately. You must find Situ Hai's hiding place." Emo June said in shock, "My lord, are you going to kill Situ Hai?" The Yunzhou Mansion Master sneered. "If I really wanted to kill him, I would have done it earlier." Emo June frowned and said, "I don't understand. Since you're not going to kill him, why do you still want to find out where he's hiding? I was the one who ordered the destruction of the Situ family back then. Do you think Fatso will let me go? No, it's because he's not strong enough. One day, when his strength surpasses mine, he'll definitely come and settle the score with me. At that time, Situ Hai will be an important bargaining chip in my hand." The Yunzhou Mansion Master said with a chilling smile. Emo June came to a realization and bowed. "My lord, you're wise. I also have a request. If that day really comes, please kill Qin Feiyang and avenge my grandson Emo Wushan." "I will." You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.